Chapter 584. In a secret underground chamber that was not hidden, the leaders of the 6 great clans of Cloud City sat together with solemn expressions, their brows tightly furrowed. I believe everyone already knows that the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group, the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, and the Carnage Blood Mercenary Group have joined forces and formed a powerful group. This is very disadvantageous for us. An old man said in a deep voice, "That's right. Once the 3 mercenaries work together, they'll have a total of 5 Earth Saint Masters. They'll be so powerful that they won't be much weaker than our 6 clans working together. In my opinion, we need to do something where the consequences will be unthinkable," a white-robed, middle-aged man sternly said. "Taking action is inevitable, but I think we need to find out why the 3 mercenary groups suddenly joined forces and changed their name to the Raging Flame Mercenary Group. Today, I heard from my subordinates that the leaders of the Carnage Mercenary Group and the Blood Rose Mercenary Group were actually walking behind a young man. Could it be that they were subdued by this young man?" said an old man. "Looks like this young man's identity is not so simple. But no matter what his identity is, we can't just watch them grow. This young man has actually subdued 3 mercenaries in just 2 short days. This shows just how ambitious he is. It's very likely that the 3 mercenaries won't be able to satisfy him. Once he subdues all the other organizations in the city, it's very likely that his final target will be us. That makes sense. If we continue to sit here and wait for death, we'll only be digging our own graves. Once the flame mercenaries surpass us in strength, they'll swallow us whole with their bloody mouth. We need to take action now. There's no time to lose." The 6 of them discussed intensely around a round table. The rapid growth of the flame mercenaries made them feel extremely uneasy. A white-haired old man gently coughed and said, "Everyone, old man has thought of a way to stop the flame mercenaries from growing stronger. Since the flame mercenaries can swallow up all the other organizations in the city, why can't we do the same? Let's do this. Let's form an alliance immediately and get all the organizations in the city to join us in the name of protecting their freedom and status. Once an external organization invades, we'll all work together to fend them off." That's right. This is a good way to stop the flame mercenaries from growing. With the flame mercenaries' current strength, we'll suffer heavy losses if we want to destroy them. Once the alliance is formed, if the flame mercenaries try to swallow up any of the organizations in the alliance, we'll have plenty of reason to move against them. At that time, we can borrow the power of the entire city to destroy the flame mercenaries. We'll be able to achieve the greatest results with the smallest price. Yes, that's what we should do. However, I think the flame mercenaries will definitely move against the other organizations in the city. We need to stop them from growing stronger, or it won't be so easy to deal with them in the future. Once we return, we'll immediately send people to keep an eye on them. We need to stop them as soon as they do anything. Then it's settled. Time is of the essence, so let's begin the arrangements as soon as we return. In less than 10 minutes, the 6 clans came up with a plan to deal with the flame mercenaries. The flame mercenaries had grown far too quickly, actually subduing the Carnage mercenaries, Blood Rose mercenaries, and Bloodthorn mercenaries in just 2 short days. This made the 6 clans feel fear. If they wanted to maintain their status in the city and prevent themselves from being swallowed up, they could only suppress the flame mercenaries with everything they had. The members of the 6 great clans could be said to have acted extremely quickly. As soon as the meeting was over, they immediately took action and tried their best to rope in all the organizations with a certain level of strength within Cloud Capital. These organizations all knew about the flame mercenaries, so most of them did not hesitate and chose to temporarily join the alliance formed by the 6 great clans. With their addition, the alliance's strength rapidly increased as well. Coupled with the people of the 6 clans, they now had over 10 Earth Saint Masters. Although Jinshin had heard about the actions of the 6 clans, he did not care at all. Their actions were completely useless in Jinshin's eyes, having no effect at all. The next morning, Jinshin gathered the commanders of the Blood Rose mercenaries, Hani and Zhang Tian, together. Before Jinshin was a stack of old books. Jinshin pushed the books to the center and said, "Since you've all joined my flame mercenaries, I should fulfill my promise. Here are 5 basic Earth tier battle skills. You can each choose one that suits you and memorize it. If anyone in your group breaks through to Earth Saint Master in the future, you can pass the Earth tier battle skill to them. In the future, once you have made great contributions and are loyal to the Flame Mercenaries, I will naturally pass the Heaven tier battle skill to you. Thank you, Captain. Their gazes immediately began to burn as they looked at the books on the table. After emotionally thanking him, they began to choose in a hurry. Among the 5 of them, the captain of the Bloodthorn Mercenaries was the most excited. He had joined the Flame Mercenaries completely because of Jasmine. He had never thought that he would receive such great benefits after joining the Flame Mercenaries. In particular, he felt like his heart was about to jump out of his chest when he heard about the Heaven tier battle skill that Jinshin had mentioned. Without a doubt, Jinshin's actions were the best way to win their hearts. After receiving the Earth tier battle skills, the 5 of them began to rejoice that they had come across the Flame Mercenaries. Jinshin also smiled when he saw how excited the 5 of them were. He was very satisfied with this outcome. After a moment of hesitation, Jinshin said, "Our Flame Mercenaries will not be staying in Cloud Capital for long. We may leave in a few days, so don't let your people go out for activities for the next few days." "Captain, may I ask, does our Flame Mercenaries have a base? Where are we going to settle down? We can't just bring so many people and wander all over the place, right?" Hani asked. Jinshin furrowed his brows and pondered for a while before replying. "This has not been decided yet. For now, it's best to develop the power of the mercenaries. After we've subdued the forces in Cloud Capital, we'll slowly subdue all the large mercenary forces in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Finally, we'll continue to expand in the surrounding kingdoms." Hearing these words, Hani and Jasmine, who did not know about Jinshin's background, were shocked. They had never thought that Jinshin's ambition would be so great. He actually wanted to annex all the mercenary forces in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Even the nearby kingdoms had become his targets. All right, let's end today's discussion here. Next, the 5 of you will use the name of the Flame Mercenaries to subdue all the organizations with Earth Saint Masters in Cloud Capital. Jinshin said. Now that the 5 of them were present, he no longer needed to personally deal with the matter of reorganizing Cloud Capital. It was enough to leave it to the 5 of them. The 5 of them accepted the order and left at the same time. After the 5 of them had left, Jinshin hugged the white tiger that was happily playing on the bed. He gently stroked its soft fur as he sank into his thoughts, thinking about what to do next. Right now, the first thing Jinshin needed to do was to develop his own organization. He had once promised Uncle Kendall that he would develop the Flame Mercenaries into the greatest mercenary group on the Tianyuan continent. Since he had said that, he needed to do it. Not only was this a promise, but it was also a goal in his heart. This was because the Flame Mercenaries was an organization that completely belonged to him. Although there was not a single Heaven Saint Master in the Flame Mercenaries aside from him, Jinshin was not in a hurry. This was because he also understood that although the Flame Mercenaries were beginning to take shape, they were still a child. Their heritage was shallow, and they could not even compare to some of the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom. However, this was something that needed time to slowly accumulate. This included the new members of the Flame Mercenaries. Right now, Jinshin could not guarantee that they would be loyal to the Flame Mercenaries. Without any exaggeration, Jinshin could not find a single person he could trust in the Flame Mercenaries other than Er's group, including Zhang Tian and the others. However, what Jinshin needed right now was not their trust, but fresh blood and manpower. He believed that once the Flame Mercenaries truly flourished, the members would develop deep feelings for the mercenaries. They would treat the mercenaries like their own home. Kyle and the others were a very good example. Unknowingly, Jinshin had already spent 2 hours in his room thinking. At this moment, a knock suddenly rang out, interrupting Jinshin's thoughts. Jinshin stared at the tightly shut door and said, "Come in." At the entrance, Ming Dong, who was dressed in black, and Dugu Feng, who was still dressed in fiery red robes, walked in side by side. Jinshin, Zhang Tian, and the others have run into trouble. When they went to take over a sect, They just happened to run into the people of the 6 great clans of the Cloud Capital. They've been trapped in the sect, so they can't retreat even if they want to, Ming Dong said with a rather ugly expression. Jian Shan frowned slightly when he heard that. He murmured, I never thought that the 6 great clans would move so quickly. This has exceeded my expectations. Chapter 585. After a moment of thought, Jian Shan said, All right then, since the 6 clans have come to get in our way, I might as well go all the way and subdue them all. It'll save me the trouble. Lead the way. I'll go over right now. Afterward, Jian Shan called Yu Yu and Tai Ta to leave the inn together. They mounted their class 3 magical beasts and quickly disappeared into the end of the street. At this moment, in a luxurious courtyard in Cloud Capital City, hundreds of burly men were crowded inside. They formed a circle that surrounded a small group of about 50 people, and it was so tight that not even a drop of water could leak through. Within this small group of over 50 people, the 5 people standing at the very front were the most eye-catching. In Cloud City, there were probably only a few people who did not recognize them. This was because they were the leader of the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group, Hani, the leader of the Blood Rose Mercenary Group, Jasmine, the leader of the Carnage Mercenary Group, War Sky, and the 2 vice leaders, Shan Xiong and Muchi Mali, and Han Ai stared at the people around them sternly. Their gazes lingered on the people at the very front for a long time. They were extremely stern because all of them were famous in the city. They were all Earth Saint Masters, and there were even some people who had been Earth Saint Masters for many years who were much more powerful than them. They could easily take on 2 people by themselves. On the other hand, Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, and Shan Xiong all had relaxed expressions on their faces. Even though they were surrounded by more than 10 experts of the same level, there was not the slightest bit of worry on their faces. Instead, there was a faint sneer of disdain and ridicule. The 2 sides remained in a stalemate for a while before Zhang Tian aggressively took a step forward. He sneered, Everyone, may I ask what is the meaning of this? Do you want to start a war with the Flame Mercenaries? Sai, Zhang Tian, Mu Qi, Shan Xiong, Jasmine, Hani, although we aren't very familiar with each other, we've met each other a few times. What we didn't expect was that all of you would give up the good post of captain and choose to join the Blazing Mercenaries, willing to become pawns with no future. Is this worth it? It was as though he felt that it was not worth it for Zhang Tian's group of 5 to become someone else's subordinates. Zhang Tian, Jasmine, Hani, the 3 of you should withdraw from the Raging Flame Mercenary Group. Think about how glorious it is to be the leader of a faction. Why do you need to become someone else's lackey? This is simply an insult to your status. A middle-aged man also opened his mouth to advise them. That's right, Zhang Tian. Your Carnage Mercenary Group is the most powerful mercenary group in Cloud City. Now, you have to sacrifice your entire group strength for someone else. It's not worth it. It's still not too late to turn back now. With the power of our Cloud Capital, we will definitely be able to drive out the evil forces. The leaders of many forces were trying to persuade Warski's group of 5 to leave the Blazing Flame Mercenary Group. Unless they had no other choice, they didn't want to start a fight with Zhang Tian's group of 5. As the saying goes, if you kill 1,000 enemies, you will lose 800 of your own men. Moreover, the strength of the 3 great mercenary groups commanded by Zhang Tian and the other 2 couldn't be underestimated. Once the 2 sides started fighting, they would also suffer some losses. That's enough. All of you stop talking. Muchi waved his hand somewhat impatiently. We're all proud to be able to join the Blazing Flame Mercenary Group. Don't use these harsh words to provoke us, because it's completely useless. That's right. I, Hani, am extremely fortunate to be able to join the Blazing Flame Mercenary Group. You people from the 6 great families should stop fanning the flames and sowing discord between us and the Blazing Flame Mercenary Group. It's completely a waste of effort. The leader of the Bloodthorn Mercenary Group, Harry, also frowned impatiently. He had obtained an Earth-tier battle skill that he had yearned for even in his dreams as soon as he joined the Blazing Flame Mercenary Group. It had almost driven him crazy with excitement, so he was naturally very protective of this group that he had just joined. The expressions of the leaders of the 6 great families and the other forces all became rather gloomy. One of them said with a heavy voice, "It looks like you've been poisoned too deeply. There's no saving you." Everyone, it seems that us joining the Blazing Flame mercenary group has nothing to do with you at all. Since when do we need you to interfere in our own affairs? Warsky laughed loudly. Everyone chose to remain silent in response to Warsky's words. Warsky ignored the people from the 6 great families and looked at an old man beside him. He clasped his hands and said, "Patriarch Jerry, may I ask if you've considered the suggestion I made earlier? If you join our Blazing Flame mercenary group, you will receive something you'll never be able to obtain in your entire life. Moreover, your future will be limitless." "How dare you, Warsky? Jerry is already a member of our alliance. You're trying to recruit him before so many of us. What do you think of our alliance?" An old man called out with a heavy voice. His face was rather ugly. The Blazing Flame mercenary group that Warsky and the others represented was becoming more and more lawless. They actually showed no fear before so many of them, which made many of them feel rather uneasy. There had to be a reason for this abnormality. "I never thought that this place would be much livelier than I imagined. I think all the influential organizations in Cloud Capital have gathered here." Suddenly, a clear voice rang out from outside. A few young men and women swaggered in from outside. All of them wore luxurious clothes and possessed extraordinary bearings. The eyes of Warsky and the others lit up when they saw them, because the people who had come this time were Jinshin's group. Everyone in the courtyard stared at Jinshin's group. Their faces were extremely hostile. "Who are you?" A middle-aged man glared at Jinshin's group and called out harshly, "This is the captain of our Blazing Flame mercenary group." Before Jinshin could say anything, Warsky took the initiative to introduce him. He knew that Jinshin was a peak Heaven Saint Master with a limitless future, so he obviously had to curry favor with him. Everyone stared at Jinshin in surprise after hearing Warsky's introduction. They were extremely surprised. Many of them had never thought that the captain of the Flame mercenary group that had subdued the 3 great mercenary groups of Cloud Capital would be a young man who did not even seem to be in his 20s. And I had thought that the captain of the Flame mercenary group would be some great figure. I never thought that he would be a child who still smells of his mother's milk. What a joke, a black-robed old man mocked. I never thought that the 3 great mercenary groups of Cloud Capital would be willing to submit to a child who still smells of his mother's milk. Sigh, what a pity. A skinny old man shook his head and sighed. Jinshin's eyes turned cold when he heard what the 2 of them had said. He called out, "Ming Dong, Dugu Feng." Ming Dong and Dugu Feng understood what he meant. They both drew their saint weapons and charged toward the 2 people who had spoken. Their saint weapons surged with energy as they stabbed toward the 2 of them. The 2 old men who had spoken were also the leaders of the group. They were also Earth Saint Masters, so they reacted extremely quickly. They immediately drew their saint weapons to block the attacks. The giant sword in Dugu Feng's hand blazed with flames as it collided with his opponent's saint weapon with a thunderous boom. His opponent, the black-robed old man, was forced to stagger backwards by the impact. A 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master. The black-robed old man was surprised, but in the next moment, his face drastically changed from fright when he heard Dugu Feng's words. Earth Tier Battle Skill, World Splitter. Dugu Feng's huge sword shone with a bright light as powerful energy surged from it. He then wielded the sword with both hands and raised it high above his head. He swung it toward the black-robed old man with enough force to split a mountain. The black-robed old man wanted to dodge, but a powerful pressure suddenly appeared and pressed down on his body. He felt like he was in a quagmire, like he was being weighed down by a huge rock. Even moving was difficult. In the end, he had no choice but to use a human tier battle skill he knew to block Dugu Feng's Earth tier battle skill. The clash between a human tier battle skill and an Earth tier battle skill was like throwing an egg at a rock. The black-robed old man was blown far away as blood constantly spurted from his mouth. He was heavily injured. At the same time, the skinny old man was heavily injured by Ming Dong as well. He fell to the ground 20 meters away, creating a small crack. His face was pale as he constantly coughed up blood. His injuries were much more severe than the black-robed old man's. Although Ming Dong did not use a battle skill, his strength as a sixth-cycle Earth Saint Master was extremely terrifying. Dealing with a second-cycle Earth Saint Master was a piece of cake for him. The strength that Ming Dong and Dugafeng had displayed surprised quite a few people, but they were not afraid because they had over a dozen experts on their side. They possessed an absolute advantage in terms of numbers. No matter how powerful their opponents were, they could still suppress them. However, the Earth-tier battle skill that Dugafeng displayed was something that everyone coveted. Everyone looked at Dugafeng with undisguised greed in their eyes. How dare you touch a member of our alliance? Everyone attacked together. Suddenly, an old man bellowed out. He immediately drew his saint weapon and charged toward Dugafeng. His eyes burned with desire. The other Earth Saint Masters all returned to their senses with the old man's words. All of them rushed toward Dugafeng. Jianshun sneered as he watched the experts charge toward Dugafeng. He sneered, "You don't know what's good for you." With that, Jianshun reached out with both hands, and surging energy of the world rapidly gathered. Afterward, he suddenly pushed his hands forward, and an extremely surging storm of energy erupted from his hands. It seemed like a furious dragon was roaring as it rapidly charged forward. The dozen or so Earth Saint Masters charging at Dugafeng did not even have the time to react before they were struck by the surging energy. The clothes on the upper half of their bodies were instantly reduced to dust before they all spat out a mouthful of dark red blood. Their bodies were like broken kites as they flew back several dozen meters before crashing to the ground in an extremely miserable manner. In less than a breath's time, the awe-inspiring Earth Saint Masters were all heavily injured and lying on the ground. Chapter 586. Although the spacious courtyard of the Jelly Clan was filled with several hundred people, it was completely silent at this moment. Only the heavy breathing of countless people could be heard. Everyone stared in shock at the dozen or so Earth Saint Masters who had been blown away and could not get up even after a long time. Their faces were filled with disbelief and shock. Even Ha-Ni and Jasmine, who did not know Jianshun's exact strength, were stunned by Jianshun's sudden display of strength. They stared at Jianshun in disbelief, unable to return to their senses even after a long time. Just what kind of strength was this to heavily injure over a dozen Earth Saint Masters in a single move? Wow, brother, you're so powerful. You dealt with over a dozen Earth Saint Masters without any effort at all. Is this the strength of a Heaven Saint Master? You're just too powerful. Suddenly, a clear and excited voice rang out in the silent courtyard, breaking the silence. Bai Lian stood beside Jianshun, staring at him in admiration. She was so excited that her face had become pink. The four words Heaven Saint Master were like a heavy hammer, viciously striking everyone's chests, causing them to violently tremble. Afterward, everyone's gazes toward Jianshun were filled with deep shock. None of them dared to believe that the young man before them, who was only in his 20s, was actually a peak Heaven Saint Master. Even in the entire Blue Wind Kingdom, a person like that would be an existence that stood at the very top of the pyramid. Even the king would need to treat them courteously as equals. Jasmine and Ha-Ni both stared at Jianshun blankly. Only now did the two of them realize in shock that the captain of the flame mercenaries they had come into such close contact with was actually a peak Heaven Saint Master. Even in the current Blue Wind Kingdom, there were only a pitiful 4 of them left. All of them possessed great statuses and were not people they could come into contact with. So our captain is actually a Heaven Saint Master. Molly's and Hani's minds continuously reverberated with this thought. At this moment, the two of them were unprecedentedly excited. Their fiercely beating hearts seemed as though they were about to jump out of their chests. Apart from Jianshun's group, the only ones who were able to remain calm were Worski's trio. They had already known about Jianshun's identity, so they weren't surprised at all. At this moment, the Earth Saint Masters that had been blown away by Jianshun stood up with great difficulty. Such a simple action was extremely difficult to perform, but the way they looked at Jianshun had completely changed. Their faces were filled with shock. Why? You're actually a Heaven Saint Master. A middle-aged man in tight robes said with a trembling voice. He was the patriarch of one of the 6 great clans of Cloud Capital. Jianshun hugged the white tiger on his shoulder as he coldly stared at the heavily injured Earth Saint Masters. He emotionlessly said, "Since you've all worked together to attack my flame mercenaries, I obviously won't let you go so easily. Submit to me and prosper, or oppose me and die. Make your choice." The faces of the Earth Saint Masters all became rather ugly, but none of them dared to say anything. The deterrence of a Heaven Saint Master was just too great. They didn't even dare to say anything. If a Heaven Saint Master wanted to kill them, it would be as easy as killing an ant. They did not even have the ability to flee. With Jianshun's words, the entire courtyard fell silent. No one dared to say anything. A while later, an old man slowly arrived before Jianshun. He knelt down on one knee and politely said, "Esteemed expert, I am Jerry. The patriarch of the Jerry clan is extremely honored to be able to serve as esteemed expert. We are willing to join the Flame Mercenaries under your command." The old man was also an Earth Saint Master, as well as the master of the mansion. Jianshun nodded with a smile. "Very good. Our Flame Mercenaries will not mistreat anyone. It is the honor of our Jerry clan to serve as esteemed expert. We don't dare to ask for anything," Jerry seriously replied. Being able to join an organization led by a Heaven Saint Master was something that many people yearned for even in their dreams. Not only was it a great backing, it was also a symbol of a peak organization. Although they would lose their authority, their status would undoubtedly increase by a lot. Jianshun looked at the other Earth Saint Masters and asked, "What do you think? I don't have that much time to wait for you." Quite a few of them were hesitant. Not everyone was like Jerry, willing to give up the foundation they had built up over many years as long as they could find a powerful backer. They were extremely unwilling to hand over the world that they had worked so hard for over many years to someone else. You seem to be able to guess what they were worried about when she saw their hesitant expressions. She said, "Don't worry. After joining the Flame Mercenaries, they won't take away your authority. As long as they belong to your clan, they'll still be under your command." Their eyes lit up, and they all looked at Jianshun with questioning gazes. Jianshun smiled. "That's right. After joining the Flame Mercenaries, I won't take away your authority. Your people will still be under your command, but everything has to be in the interests of the Flame Mercenaries. You can't do anything that will harm the interests of the Flame Mercenaries or betray the Flame Mercenaries. Otherwise, I think you all understand the consequences." Jianshun's tone also became stern towards the end. "Whatever. If that's the case, my Chuyang sect will join your Flame Mercenaries. I hope the captain will not go back on his word and will not take away our authority over our disciples." An old man was the first to agree. "Of course. I can guarantee that to all of you," Jianshun confirmed, calming everyone down. After receiving Jianshun's confirmation, the leaders no longer hesitated. Including the 6 great clans, they all chose to join the Flame Mercenaries. Jianshun was extremely happy that all the organizations had submitted. This was because the Flame Mercenaries' strength had increased by several times with their addition. Coupled with Warski's group of 5, the Flame Mercenaries now possessed over 20 Earth Saint Masters. Now, the Flame Mercenaries had truly become a peak force. Of course, this was only relative to small kingdoms like the Blue Wind Kingdom. If the Flame Mercenaries were thrown onto the vast Tian Yuan continent, they would only be a child that had not grown up. Once we get back, change the sign above the entrance yourselves. Hang the banner of the Flame Mercenaries on all of them, Jianshun said in a commanding tone. "Yes, sir," the leaders all replied. They were all smart people. Since they had already joined the Flame Mercenaries, they knew what position they stood in. "I'll give you a few days to recover. At the same time, you should deal with the internal matters of your clans. Once you've recovered, leave the city with me," Jianshun said. However, what he said at the end surprised quite a few people. If we leave Cloud Capital, then the foundation we've built in Cloud Capital. An old man's face was filled with difficulty. He was very reluctant to abandon the world that he had painstakingly built over the past few decades. "You're interested in just this little bit of land? How short-sighted. Don't worry. Follow our captain's footsteps. Our captain will lead you to the peak sooner or later. It'll be much better than hiding in a tiny piece of land in the cloud capital. Warsky snorted coldly. Hearing this, everyone gradually felt relieved. Afterwards, Jianshin handed over a few more matters before dispersing. Now that the mission was complete, he did not stay outside any longer. He left with Ming Dong, Warsky, and the others. With the addition of the 6 great clans and over a dozen other organizations, there were no longer any organizations that could catch Jianshin's attention. In just 3 days, Jianshan had basically subdued all the decent organizations in the city. Wow, brother, you really are amazing. You made these large clans join our flame mercenaries so easily. If we were in Phoenix Sun City, every single one of them would be no weaker than the 3 great clans of Phoenix Sun City. Balian followed behind Jianshin excitedly. Everything that had happened today was something that she would never have dared to dream about in the past. Jianshin could not help but smile gently when he saw how happy Balian was. In particular, Jianshin's heart warmed when he heard Balian call him brother. Now, other than protecting Balian from harm, he also wanted her to be happy every day. This was his responsibility as a big brother. Balian, you haven't even condensed a saint weapon yet. You have to work hard on your cultivation in the future. Only when you're strong can you do more things. If you need monster cores, feel free to ask your brother for them, Jianshin said. Chapter 587. Jianshan bitterly smiled. Balian, you're oversimplifying things. I'm not as glorious as I seem on the surface. I actually have quite a lot of guts on my shoulders. Balian blinked her large eyes as she stared at Jianshin curiously. She asked, Brother, can you tell me what kind of burden it is? Jianshan gently sighed. He did not dwell on the topic and change the topic. Balian, your talent may be lacking, but there are many heavenly resources that can change a person's constitution. Once I come across heavenly resources like that in the future, I'll buy them for you, so that you can completely change. Heavenly resources that can change a person's constitution are at least 10,000 years old. Although there are heavenly resources like that on the Tian Yuan continent, every single one of them is priceless. You can only come across them in prosperous kingdoms. Small kingdoms like the Kingdom of Jessin and the Blue Wind Kingdom basically won't have treasures like that. Even if they do appear, they'll only appear once in a century. Dugu Feng, who rarely spoke, said very indifferently. Once I have the opportunity to go to those places in the future, I'll definitely go look around and see if there are any 10,000-year-old heavenly resources. Jianshan gently smiled. His wealth was enough to rival an entire kingdom, so he did not care about the heavenly resources at all. Balian felt happy inside when she saw how much Jianshin cared about her. She smiled happily. At this moment, Jianshin suddenly looked at Tai Ta. He saw that Tai Ta remained silently seated on his magical beast. He seemed to be in a daze. Jianshin understood from Tai Ta's appearance that it would take some time for him to adapt to the environment on the Tian Yuan continent with his honest personality. Tai Ta, you've seen what has happened in the past few days. This is the law of survival on the Tian Yuan continent. It's the law of the jungle. Only the strong have the right to speak. If you want to survive here, you can only rely on your strength. There's no need to talk about feelings, Jianshan said to Tai Ta. Tai Ta raised his head and looked at Jianshan with a complicated gaze. He said, Jianshan, the outside world is just too cruel. It feels like a place of bandits. Jianshan chuckled and said, That's right, because this is how the world works. If you don't have strength, you will only be bullied by others. Only when you are strong, others will fear you and not dare to provoke you. The scene that just happened in the Jerry family is the best proof. Big guy, I couldn't tell. You look so big and fierce, but your heart is so kind. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Ming Dong chuckled. Tai Ta blushed slightly when he heard Ming Dong's words, but he could not find anything to say. He could only choose to remain silent. Jianshin's gaze then landed on Yu Yu, who was walking beside him. Yu Yu was wearing a long white dress. Coupled with her devastatingly beautiful face and her natural noble temperament, she was truly worthy of being a princess of a country. Jianshin looked at Yu Yu with mixed feelings and guilt. He had no idea how he should treat his fiancée, because in his heart, whether it was Huang Luan, who he had a physical relationship with, or Yu Yu, who had been engaged by his parents, he didn't have any thoughts about it. Until now, he hadn't considered the issue of personal relationships. This was because he had deeply experienced the way of life on the Tian Yuan continent. Not to mention, he had made so many enemies in the outside world. There were plenty of saint rulers among them. They weighed down on Jianshun like a mountain, so Jianshun had no time to waste on romance. All he could do was focus on increasing his strength. Everyone below Saint Ruler was an ant. He understood that only when he reached the supreme realm of Saint Ruler would he have a foothold on the Tian Yuan continent. However, Saint Ruler was not so easy to break through. Even though he had absorbed the fragments of the mysteries of the world in the sacred land of Mercenary City, he still needed a very long process to reach that level. Yu could not help but blush slightly when she sensed Jianshun's gaze on her. Her calm heart immediately began to thump like a little deer. She grumbled, "Jianshun, what's the matter?" Jianshun suddenly returned to his senses. He smiled brightly. "Yu, this is the first time you ventured onto the Tian Yuan continent. Are you used to the days of wandering around outside?" Yu smiled sweetly. "I like this kind of life very much. I get to see so many different sceneries and the vast world every day, as well as so many shocking and interesting things. It's not like staying in the Imperial Palace in the past, where all I can do is look at the same scenery over and over again. Even leaving the Imperial Palace once is so troublesome. Actually, when I read about the outside world in the library of Kargath Academy, I've always hoped that I would be able to wander the Tian Yuan continent one day. It's finally come true now," Yu happily said. Jianshun gently sighed. "Although the outside world is very interesting, it's extremely dangerous as well. There are people fighting to the death in various places on the Tian Yuan continent at almost every moment. Countless people die every day. Actually, a peaceful life might be a form of enjoyment." Yu stared at Jianshun with mixed feelings. She grumbled, "Jianshun, your current strength and status are enough for you to gain a stable footing on the Tian Yuan continent, so why don't you let go of the burden on your shoulders and properly enjoy yourself?" "Sigh." Jianshun gently sighed. "The burden on my shoulders can't be let go just because I want to. There are some matters that need to be dealt with." "Were they? Can you tell me?" Yu asked curiously. Jianshun shook his head. "It's not that I don't want to tell you, but knowing these matters won't bring you any benefits. All right, let's talk about something else. I wonder what you think about the current situation of the Flame Mercenaries." They discussed the matter of the Flame Mercenaries as they hurried back to the inn. Although basically all the large organizations in the city had been subdued by Jianshun, Jianshun and the others still stayed in the same inn. Just as Jianshun and the others returned to the inn, the leaders of the organizations that had left the Jelly Clan all returned to their clans. The first thing they did when they returned was to get people to change the signboard above the entrance to the Flame Mercenaries. News of their shocking actions spread through the entire city at an unbelievable speed, shocking everyone in the city. At that moment, anyone with half a brain understood that the balance of power in the city had been completely broken. It had become a monopoly. The Flame Mercenaries that had only appeared in the city for 2 or 3 days had become well known in an extremely short amount of time. Discussions about the Flame Mercenaries could be heard in the entire city at any time. When the City Lord of Cloud City received this news, he was stunned. His face was full of disbelief and horror. More than a dozen of the strongest forces in Cloud City had joined forces. Their strength had far surpassed the City Lord's mansion. They were even comparable to the top forces of Blue Wind Kingdom. How could this not shock the City Lord? At the same time, the City Lord realized an extremely serious problem. Right now, the City Lord's estate had basically become a decoration in Cloud Capital. Even if the Flame Mercenaries really wanted to do something in the city, there was nothing he could do. He could not stop them at all. Just who is the captain of the Flame Mercenaries? He's actually been able to subdue so many powerful organizations in such a short amount of time. Just what are they trying to do? The City Lord's eyebrows were tightly furrowed. The growth of the Flame Mercenaries made him feel deeply uneasy. The flame mercenaries are no longer something we can deal with. I need to report this to the king." The city lord immediately picked up a brush and began to write, sending an extremely urgent secret letter back to the imperial palace. Half a day later, in the palace of the Blue Wind Kingdom, the king was sitting in his study room, reading the urgent secret letter from Cloud City. His face became more and more serious, and in the end, even his eyebrows were tightly knitted together. A while later, the king of the Blue Wind Kingdom gently put down the letter and murmured, "The Flame Mercenaries? Where did this mercenary organization come from? Why have I never heard of it before? They're actually able to subdue over a dozen organizations with Earth Saint Masters in such a short amount of time. It's unbelievable." The king pondered with furrowed brows. The sudden appearance of the Flame Mercenaries had actually managed to subdue over a dozen first-rate organizations in just 3 short days. This had already attracted the king's attention. Suddenly, the king seemed to think of something. His eyes immediately lit up. "Don't tell me the Flame Mercenaries have a Heaven Saint Master? Only a Heaven Saint Master has the ability to subdue over a dozen first-rate organizations." After coming to this conclusion, His Majesty's face immediately became serious. He shouted to the outside, "Someone go and ask Master Kuyin to come here right now." Very soon, a gray-robed old man strode in. The old man seemed to be in his 60s. He had white hair and a ruddy complexion. His eyes shone with interest. "Your Majesty, may I ask why you've summoned me?" The old man smiled at the king and did not bow. The king passed the letter in his hand over. "Master Kuyin, take a look." The old man gently waved his hand, and the letter in the king's hand actually flew toward him. It landed firmly in his hand, and he immediately began to read it. Very soon, a sliver of surprise appeared in the old man's eyes. He murmured, "The Flame Mercenaries are not simple. They're actually able to subdue over a dozen first-rate organizations in just 3 days. Since they possess such strength, why have I never heard of them before?" Chapter 588. Your Majesty, you mean to say that we should eliminate this force? The old man probed. The king pondered for a moment before replying. There's no need to eliminate them. If our Blue Wind Kingdom gains an expert like that, it'll naturally be our kingdom's fortune. However, I'm afraid that he's an outsider. Once our Blue Wind Kingdom grows stronger, he'll leave with this force. If that happens, our Blue Wind Kingdom will lose quite a bit of strength. We've just experienced a great battle with the Kingdom of Jessin, and our kingdom's strength is weak. I definitely won't let something like that happen at a time like this. Then what does your Majesty mean? The old man asked. Master Kuyin, I'll have to trouble you again this time. I hope that you can personally investigate the background of the Flame Mercenaries and see what their goal is. If they only want to stay in the Blue Wind Kingdom and develop, then I'll obviously welcome them. However, if they want to take away the strength of the Blue Wind Kingdom or do something detrimental to our kingdom, then you must stop them with lightning speed. You can't be merciful, the king sternly said. The old man nodded and replied, I understand. I know what to do. With that, the old man turned around and left. Master Kuyin, please wait. The king stopped the old man and said, Master Kuyin, I'm worried that there will be a Heaven Saint Master in the Flame Mercenaries, so it's best if you bring someone with you when you go to Cloud Capital this time. Thank you for your concern, Your Majesty. Kuyin turned around and clasped his hands at the king with a smile. Afterward, he strode out of the study with his head held high. The king watched Kuyin leave as a sliver of worry gradually appeared on his face. He murmured, Why do I feel uneasy? Is it because of the Flame Mercenaries? Could it be that the sudden appearance of the Flame Mercenaries is a great disaster to our Blue Wind Kingdom? Thinking up to this point, the king's face became extremely stern. He sighed. In the battle of the Kingdom of Jessin, only 4 of the 8 Heaven Saint Masters of our Blue Wind Kingdom remain. The other experts have also suffered heavy casualties. They can't endure much more. I hope that my premonition is wrong. Cloud Capital had been in an uproar for the past 2 days. Whether it was in the streets or in the inns, one could hear countless people discussing the Flame Mercenaries at all times. The Flame Mercenaries seem to have appeared out of thin air in Cloud Capital City before quickly ruling over a dozen first-rate organizations in the city. This caused an extremely great commotion in Cloud Capital City. Some of the second- and third-rate organizations in the city became extremely nervous as well. They lived their days in fear and trepidation. There were even a few small organizations that chose to temporarily leave the city to avoid the brunt of the storm and return after the storm passed. They were deeply afraid that the Flame Mercenaries would extend their claws towards them, so they were unwilling to give up their authority and become someone's lackey. However, not everyone in these second- and third-rate organizations was like this. Some organizations had even taken the initiative to find a dozen or so first-rate organizations that had submitted to the Flame Mercenaries to join the Flame Mercenaries. The leaders of the first-rate organizations had also received Jinshin's orders. They did not turn down any of the small organizations that had taken the initiative to join, accepting them all. The Flame Mercenaries needed fresh blood and large amounts of manpower far too much right now. Jinshin was not worried about management at all. Since the leaders of the first-rate organizations had the ability to create their own organizations, they obviously had the ability to manage their own groups. Seeing more and more clans and organizations join the Flame Mercenaries, the city lord of Cloud Capital was unable to become happy no matter what. He became more and more worried, but he had no power to stop the severe situation in the city. All he could do was make an extremely helpless choice and watch silently from the side. His only hope was to wait for the intervention of the higher-ups. Fortunately, Anna's wild beast mercenaries have all left for a mission. Otherwise, they probably wouldn't have been able to avoid being swallowed up, the city lord murmured. Time continued to pass. In the blink of an eye, for days had passed since the Flame Mercenaries had swallowed up a dozen first-rate organizations. By now, the matter in Cloud Capital had already spread throughout the entire Wind Blue Kingdom. Everyone in the various cities knew about it. At the same time, all sorts of rumors about the Flame Mercenaries were flying everywhere. However, no matter what the rumors were, this foreshadowed an important piece of information. Another peak organization had appeared in the Wind Blue Kingdom. In the first-rate city of Sky Dragon City, 1,000 miles away, a middle-aged man in his 40s wearing white robes stood in front of a pool of water with his hands behind his back. He was the city lord of Sky Dragon City. The city lord of Sky Dragon City stood there in a daze as he muttered, "Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought? Who would have thought that a small mercenary group from Wake City would actually possess such great strength?" In just a few short days, they had made all the first-rate organizations in Cloud Capital submit to them. Unbelievable. In a luxurious room in the city lord's estate, Katata and Katafii sat at a table drinking wine. Katata downed the wine in his cup in one gulp and said, "Katafii, you should know about what happened in Cloud Capital, right? I wonder if the Flame Mercenaries that appeared in Cloud Capital is the same as the one from Wake City." "Yes," Katafii replied with a straight face. It was as if he never smiled and was a man of few words. "How are you so sure?" Katata asked. "Jinshin's strength is unknown. He has a sixth-cycle Earth Saint Master as his subordinate. It's them," Katafii said expressionlessly. However, from the seriousness and shock in his eyes, one could tell that he was not as calm as he appeared on the surface. Katata downed his cup and sighed. "It's really hard to believe. It's only been 2 years since we last met, and Jinshin has already achieved so much. However, I heard that he went to participate in the mercenary gathering 2 years ago. Could it be that he obtained some great benefits there? It's a pity that we're just too far away from Mercenary City. Unless it's something extremely important, we can't get here." Within a luxurious inn in Cloud Capital, Jinshin sat on the bed and cultivated. Only the bored white tiger rolled around on the soft bed. The expensive sheets and blankets had all been torn to shreds by its sharp claws. In the past few days, Jinshin had not left the inn at all. He had basically spent all his time cultivating. He was waiting for the leaders of the various organizations to recover from their injuries and deal with the matters of their clans before leaving Cloud Capital. "Captain of the Flame Mercenaries, quickly come out and greet us." At this moment, a thunderous voice rang out from the sky. The voice was so loud that it reverberated through the surroundings. It caused the streets to tremble and the buildings to shake. Even the clouds in the sky were shaken. Everyone in the city heard the majestic voice that seemed to come from a god. The entire city fell silent at first before suddenly erupting with a deafening noise. Everyone raised their heads to look at the sky, as if they were searching for something. I see it, I see it. There are two people hovering in the sky. They're peak heaven Saint Masters. Suddenly, an excited voice rang out. A middle-aged man pointed at the sky as he cried out emotionally. Everyone looked over when they heard the voice. Sure enough, they discovered that there were two figures that were the size of ants in the sky above Cloud Capital. They were like gods that had descended to the mortal world. There's actually two heaven Saint Masters. They must have come for the Flame Mercenaries. The Flame Mercenaries are done for. The Flame Mercenaries have caused a disaster. Look at how aggressive the two heaven Saint Masters are. They must have come to wipe out the Flame Mercenaries. Everyone discussed with each other. Many people rejoiced in the misfortune of the Flame Mercenaries, but a few organizations that had already joined the Flame Mercenaries paled. The city lord hurriedly ran out of the hall in the city lord's estate. He excitedly looked at the two heaven Saint Masters in the sky and said, "Two heaven Saint Masters. His Majesty has actually sent two heaven Saint Masters. Fantastic, fantastic. The Flame Mercenaries are finally done for." Over a dozen Earth Saint Masters who had already joined the Flame Mercenaries emerged from various places in the city. Their expressions all changed when they saw the two heaven Saint Masters hovering in the sky. The people who had joined the Flame Mercenaries under Jianshan were obviously overjoyed, while the people who had joined of their own accord were all worried. A single Heaven Saint Master was already impressive enough. Now that two had come, they felt extremely pressured. Within the inn, Jianshan slowly opened his eyes and frowned slightly. At this moment, the door was pushed open and Ming Dong and the others all walked in. "Jianshan, two Heaven Saint Masters have come. They're extremely arrogant, even swaggering in the sky. It's as if they're afraid that no one knows who they are. Humph, if they dare to come down, I'll beat them until they vomit blood and flee," Ming Dong sneered. Heaven Saint Masters were no longer undefeatable existences in his eyes. "Captain of the Flame Mercenaries, hurry up and come out to see us. Don't hide in the city like a coward." At this moment, a thunderous voice rang out in the sky again. It was extremely loud. Ming Dong's face suddenly sank. He furiously said, "God damn it, who is this? They're just too arrogant." Chapter 589. In the sky, the two Heaven Saint Masters of the Blue Wind Kingdom stood in a condescending manner, looking down like gods. On the street below, countless people raised their heads to look at the sky. They stared at the two experts in admiration and yearning. Their faces were filled with unconcealable envy. Heaven Saint Master was a realm of cultivation that countless mercenaries yearned to reach. However, reaching this level of cultivation was easier said than done. The entire Blue Wind Kingdom had a population of several hundred million, but there were less than 10 experts at their peak. At this moment, a faint azure figure shot up into the sky from below. In the blink of an eye, it had reached 500 meters in the air and faced the two Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom with a distance of 20 meters. It was so fast that many people on the street were unable to see where it had come from or when it had arrived. "Everyone look, another Heaven Saint Master has appeared. Is he the captain of the Flame Mercenaries? He must be the captain of the Flame Mercenaries. I never thought that he would be a peak Heaven Saint Master as well. The captain of the Flame Mercenaries is so fast. I couldn't see where he came from at all. He must be extremely powerful. Humph, our Blue Wind Kingdom has sent a total of 2 Heaven Saint Masters this time. No matter how powerful the captain of the Flame Mercenaries is, it's impossible for him to be the opponent of 2 Heaven Saint Masters." The scene in the sky attracted the attention of everyone in the city. At this moment, everyone put down what they were doing to watch the wonderful show that was about to take place in the sky. There were bursts of noisy discussions everywhere, and the roads in the city were seriously blocked. In the city lord's estate, the city lord sternly stared at the third heaven saint master who had appeared in the sky. He mumbled, "The captain of the flame mercenaries really is a heaven saint master." In various parts of Cloud Capital, the leaders of the first-rate forces were also focused on the three figures in the sky that were as small as ants. In their hearts, they were also hoping for an exciting battle to break out between the three of them. Several hundred meters in the sky, Jianshan faced the two heaven saint masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom with a distance of 20 meters between them. "The captain of the Blazing Flame Mercenaries is here. What do the two of you need?" Jianshan's gaze was sharp as he mocked. The eyes of the two heaven saint masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom were wide open as they stared at Jianshan's familiar yet terrifying face. Their faces became extremely ugly as well as some hatred. "You're the captain of the Raging Flame Mercenaries?" A heaven saint master said sternly. He was no longer able to maintain his composure from before. Jianshan sneered and said, "That's right, it's me." "You too. May I know why you call me out?" Jianshan's eyes gradually emitted traces of murderous intent. Sensing Jianshan's murderous intent, the two heaven saint masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom felt their hearts tighten as they immediately went on high alert. The scene from back in the kingdom of Jessen clearly flashed through their minds. At that time, it was this young man who had killed several experts from the Blue Wind Kingdom and the Qinggan Kingdom. In the end, only 4 of the 8 heaven saint masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom managed to escape. Although the person before them was young, the 2 heaven saint masters did not dare to underestimate him at all. This was because they were not absolutely confident that they could defeat him. "The situation is bad. Let's go." The 2 heaven saint masters did not hesitate at all. They turned around and flew away because they could already feel Jianshan's murderous intent grow stronger and stronger. They knew that if they continued to stay, a battle would erupt sooner or later. The 2 of them did not want to fight several heaven saint masters in a row. "You want to leave? Not so easy." Jianshan sneered. He did not plan to let the 2 of them go so easily. Grabbing at the air with both hands, 2 fire elemental swords condensed in his hands. He then shot them at the 2 escaping heaven saint masters with lightning speed. Sensing the movement behind them, the 2 heaven saint masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom felt their hearts sink. They thought to themselves, this battle is unavoidable in the end. The 2 of them reacted extremely quickly. With a thought, the earth and water elemental energy in the surroundings rapidly condensed in their hands. In the blink of an eye, they condensed into 2 huge dragons. Seeing the 2 of them actually compete with him in controlling the yuan qi of the world, Jianshan could not help but have a mocking expression on his face. He sneered, "The fire elemental energy is the element with the strongest attack out of the 6 elements. Even the saint force of the light attribute and the saint force of the darkness attribute cannot compare to it in terms of attack. You actually dare to compete with me in terms of elemental energy? You are really asking for trouble." Hearing this, the expert controlling the earth dragon did not say a word. He suddenly pushed out with both hands. The earth dragon in his hands immediately roared towards the sky and charged forward with an unstoppable momentum. The fire elemental energy is indeed the element with the strongest attack out of the 6 elements. But my water can extinguish your fire. The other expert sneered. The water dragon condensed in front of him also suddenly attacked. It opened its bloody mouth and bit at the incoming fire elemental sword. Boom! The earth dragon was the first to collide with the fire elemental sword. With a loud bang, the earth dragon was smashed into pieces. It turned into yuan qi of the world and dissipated in the surroundings. The fire elemental sword that collided with the earth dragon had also shrunk a lot. It had shrunk from 5 meters to 1 meter. It continued to fly towards the old man. Soon after, a second loud bang rang out. The second fire elemental sword collided with the water dragon. The majestic water dragon directly exploded. It turned into a flood that covered the sky and wrapped around the fire elemental sword. It tried to extinguish it. Chi 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 chi. Water and fire. These 2 incompatible attributes were fiercely competing in midair, constantly emitting chi-chi sounds. Only a thick mist could be seen rising, as if a thick smoke was covering the sky, blocking everyone's line of sight. No one could see the scene inside the clear mist. Cloud Capital, this bustling city, seemed to have become a lifeless city of death at this moment. The entire city was silent. People were standing on the streets, roofs, and all the buildings. Everyone was holding their breaths and watching the battle in the sky attentively. Ming Dong, De Gufeng, and the others also stood on the roofs of the taverns. They raised their heads and watched the battle in the sky. However, Ming Dong, De Gufeng, and Yu were all relaxed. They did not worry about Jinshin's safety at all because they knew just how powerful Jinshin was. Let alone 2 Heaven Saint Masters, even 2 times as many of them would not be able to do anything to him. Only Balian, who did not know Jinshin's exact strength, became nervous. She felt like her heart was in her throat. She was extremely worried for her brother's safety. Although she knew that her brother was also a Heaven Saint Master, his opponents were 2 peak experts who had been renowned for a very long time. Taita's expression was the same as Balian's. Boom! In the sky, there was another thunderous sound. The expert whose earthen dragon was defeated took out his own saint weapon, shattering the fire elemental sword that was shooting towards him. He turned into flames and dissipated into the air. At this moment, the battle between water and fire had ended. The rising mist had become thinner, and the sizzling sound had stopped. The water dragon, condensed from the water elements, had been completely evaporated by the scorching flames, leaving not a single drop behind. The fire elemental sword wasn't unscathed either. Its size had shrunk by half, shrinking from 5 meters long to 2 meters long. What powerful flames! The expression of the expert who unleashed the water dragon changed slightly. Just as he finished speaking, the fire elemental sword that defeated the water dragon turned into a fiery red light and flashed away, continuing to shoot towards him at an extremely fast speed. The expert didn't dare to be careless. He also drew his own saint weapon, and only then did he shatter the remaining fire element sword. He then glared at Jinshin and yelled, "Since you're so overbearing, then don't be so quick. We won't hold back anymore. Kuyin, let's use our battle skills together." Kuyin nodded sternly. Now that the situation had developed like this, they had to do their best regardless of whether they were right or wrong. After making up their minds, the 2 of them did not hesitate at all. They immediately began to use their Earth Tier battle skills. With their strength as Heaven Saint Masters, using Earth Tier battle skills was a piece of cake. They did not need much time to charge up at all. Earth Tier battle skill, Earth God's Warhammer. Earth Tier battle skill, Rampaging Sword Chi. The 2 of them finished using their Earth Tier battle skills at the same time. Ku Yun raised a 10-meter-long hammer completely condensed from Earth, attributed Saint Force, and smashed it toward Jinshin. The other expert constantly swung the sword in his hand. Sword Chi filled the sky and enveloped Jinshin. Jinshin's eyes suddenly turned purple and green. The purple and green light flickered like 2 dancing will-o'-the-wisps. It was incomparably evil. All of a sudden, countless stones, bricks, and some other miscellaneous items flew up from the city below. They flickered with faint purple and green light as they flew towards the sword chi that filled the sky. At the same time, the origin energy of the sword spirits transformed into a sword that appeared in Jinshin's right hand. With the sword in hand, Jinshin's entire aura underwent an earth-shattering change. He was like an unsheathed sword, radiating with a sharp aura. With a flash of green light, Jinshin's body left behind an afterimage in the air. The sword in his hand, that had been condensed from the origin energy of the sword spirits, charged toward Ku Yun's hammer. With a light swing of the sword, the huge hammer was actually as fragile as tofu. It was easily cut in half. With the hammer destroyed, Ku Yun's Earth Tier battle skill was also broken. The surging Earth attributed Saint Force turned into strands of energy that dissipated into the surroundings. Chapter 590. A muffled groan came from Ku Yun's throat as his originally ruddy face instantly turned pale. Seeing Ku Yun's chest being pierced by Jinshin's sword, the other expert's expression suddenly changed. He immediately let out a loud roar, and a large amount of sword chi erupted from his saint weapon, blocking the countless rocks that Jianshun controlled with his mind. He then raised his saint weapon and attacked Jianshun, trying to save Ku Yun. Jianshun glanced at the expert flying towards him from the corner of his eyes, and a disdainful sneer appeared on his face. He said, "The person who just told me to get out must be you. Today, don't even think about leaving." Jianshun pulled out the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits from Ku Yun's chest and shot it towards the incoming expert like a bolt of lightning. Ding! 2 rays of light, one purple and one green, collided with the saint weapon, producing a crisp sound. Facing the powerful origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits, the saint weapon of the Heaven Saint Master was as weak as a tile and was cut open by the origin energy. PFFF. The saint weapon was damaged, causing the expert to be affected as well, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Jinshin's hand did not stop at all as the second strike followed. With his powerful physical strength, the speed of the sword was as fast as lightning. A small ray of light flashed, and before the opponent could react, the origin energy had already pierced through his head, directly shattering his soul and destroying his body and soul. Bala! Ku Yin let out a cry of surprise as he looked at the expert whose head had been pierced through with a sorrowful expression. He knew that from this moment onwards, the Blue Wind Kingdom would have one less Heaven Saint Master. Ba-La's head had been pierced through by the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits. The soul in his head rapidly dissipated and his eyes gradually became hollow. In the end, his entire body fell from the sky. Jinshin's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He took the space ring from Ba-La's finger and held it in his hand. He then turned to the sorrowful Ku Yun and expressionlessly said, "I originally wanted to kill you directly, but in the end, I decided to spare your life. When you return, tell your king to stay away from the matters of the flame mercenaries, or don't blame me for what happens next." As he spoke, the origin energy of the azure and violet sword spirits in Jinshin's hand quickly faded and disappeared. Ku Yun's facial muscles constantly twitched as he stared at the young man in front of him in both shock and fear. His voice trembled as he said, "The war between the kingdom of Jessen and our Blue Wind Kingdom has already ended. We've also given you a large amount of compensation. Bala had no enmity with you, so why did you kill him?" Jinshin coldly laughed. "Disaster comes from the mouth. Remember to be careful with your words in the future. You can leave now. Don't forget to pass those words to your esteemed king." With that, Jinshin turned around and flew away. His body rapidly descended from the sky and returned to the inn. Ku Yun blankly floated in the air as he stared at his feet with a sorrowful expression. He saw the other Heaven Saint Master who had come with him, Bala, lying motionlessly on the street below. There was already a large pool of blood there. The surroundings of Ba-La's corpse were already filled with people. Everyone stared at the corpse on the ground in shock as they blankly stared at it. Ku Yin descended from the sky and left with Ba-La's corpse. He soared through the sky and left Cloud Haven with a miserable expression. The two of them had come to Cloud Haven with great momentum, but in the end, only one of them returned alive. Although the battle in the sky had ended, the entire cloud capital was still as silent as a city of the dead. Not a single sound could be heard. Countless merchants and mercenaries stood on the streets in the same manner as before. They stared blankly at the empty sky, as if they were still intoxicated by the previous battle and had yet to recover from it. On the street where Baku had just been, more than a dozen figures rapidly flew over from the distance. In the end, they all stopped around the pool of blood with blank expressions. These dozen or so people were the leaders of the dozen or so first-rate forces in Cloud Capital City. Among them was the City Lord of Cloud Capital City. However, no one knew what they were feeling at this moment. Jinshin returned to the inn and sat on the same bed as before. However, there was now a hole above his head that allowed him to see the sky. Jinshin's group descended from the roof and arrived at Jinshin's room. As soon as they entered, they heard by Lian's excited cries, "Wah, brother, you're just too powerful. You managed to chase away 2 Heaven Saint Masters from the Blue Wind Kingdom. Bao Yin was extremely excited. Her gaze toward Jianshan was filled with admiration. He had fought against 2 Heaven Saint Masters all by himself and emerged unscathed. In her eyes, he was basically invincible. Only now did she suddenly realize that her brother was much more powerful than she had imagined him to be. Wrong. It's because one is dead and one is injured. If your brother hadn't let the last person go, he wouldn't have been able to leave here alive, corrected Ming Dong. Bao Yin became even more excited when she heard Ming Dong's words. She felt extremely proud that she had such a powerful brother. Sima Yu, who was standing to the side, looked at Jianshan with a look of infatuation. However, she soon noticed the huge hole in Jianshan's head and said gently, "Jianshan, you've broken the roof of the room. You should change to another one to rest." Jianshan raised his head to look at the roof and awkwardly smiled. "Yeah, I should change to another room." Jianshan and the others did not care about what was happening outside. They did not know that the outside world had been thrown into chaos. The battle between the captain of the Flame Mercenaries and the 2 Peak Heaven Saint Masters of the Blue Wind Kingdom alone had attracted the attention of countless people in the city. The scene of one of the Heaven Saint Masters dying and the other being injured had been clearly seen by many people with extraordinary eyesight. This matter caused an extremely great commotion in the city. The news spread through the entire kingdom at an unbelievable speed. In just half a day, it had reached every corner of the Blue Wind Kingdom in an unbelievable manner, shocking everyone. The leaders of the peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom attached great importance to this matter as well. They immediately sent experts to the Cloud Capital to investigate the authenticity of the news. However, the incident this time further strengthened the Flame Mercenary Group's position in the Blue Wind Kingdom. If it was before, the Flame Mercenary Group's subjugation of a first-class city would have attracted a lot of attention, then the incident this time would have made everyone feel terrified. In the Imperial Palace of the Blue Wind Kingdom, Ku Yun held the corpse of his companion in his arms as he met the king of the Blue Wind Kingdom in the Grand Hall. He told the king everything that had happened in the Cloud Capital, including the message that Jianshan had asked him to pass on to the king. After hearing the story, the king of the Blue Wind Kingdom sighed at the sky. At that moment, he seemed to have aged a lot. His Majesty the King was silent for a long time, then slowly opened his mouth and said, "Since we can't stop it, then don't interfere. Alas, the strength of my Blue Wind Kingdom is already declining. Now after this mess, our strength is destined to decline again." Several days later, a long group of people passed through the gates of the Cloud Capital. They set off towards the outside of the city. Within the group, a large number of flags fluttered in the wind. Whether it was the size or appearance of the flags, they were all the same. There was a burning flame embroidered on each flag. This group was the Flame Mercenaries. Currently, the Flame Mercenary Group had already reached a certain scale. The members of the mercenary group had expanded from the initial lone members to over 5,000 members. It was already a large-scale mercenary group in the Blue Wind Kingdom, and its overall strength was not the slightest bit inferior to the top forces of the Blue Wind Kingdom. At the very front of the group, Jianshan, Ming Dong, Tai Ta, Dugafeng, Yu, and Bai Lian rode side by side on their magical beast mounts. However, their Class 3 magical beasts had all been replaced by Class 4 magical beasts. These Class 4 magical beasts had all been donated by the leaders of a dozen or so organizations. Now, the leaders of these dozen or so factions had completely accepted their new identities and sincerely considered themselves to be part of the Flame Mercenaries. This was because not only had they found a powerful backer, but they had also obtained the Earth Tier battle skill that they had always desired. They even had hopes of obtaining the Heaven Tier battle skill that even Heaven Saint Masters coveted. Just how enticing was this? It was like a pie had fallen from the sky. Even a Heaven Saint Masters, it was fatally attractive, let alone them. As a result, they accepted their new identities without any hesitation. This time, they did it completely willingly, without any reluctance. "Captain, where are we going next?" Jean Tion asked from the back. Heavenly Dragon City is relatively close. Let's go there, Jinshin replied. In the following days, the flame mercenaries expanded wildly in the Blue Wind Kingdom. In an extremely short amount of time, they subdued all the first-rate organizations in the first-class cities of the Blue Wind Kingdom, causing their strength to rapidly increase. After sweeping through several first-class cities, the Flame Mercenaries now had over 30,000 members. There were close to 100 Earth Saint Masters as well. They had basically emptied out all the experts in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Chapter 591. In the blink of an eye, 2 months had passed. After 2 months of rapid development, the Flame Mercenary Group had already turned all the first-rate forces in the Blue Wind Kingdom into their own mercenary group. They had become the strongest force in the Blue Wind Kingdom, completely above the Imperial family. Until now, there were only a few peak forces in the Blue Wind Kingdom that still maintained their original position and had not been subdued by Jinshin. In the center of the Blue Wind Kingdom's first-class city, Wanzhuang City, there was a huge manor. This manor originally belonged to a first-rate force in Wanzhuang City, but it had now become the temporary base of the Flame Mercenaries. Even the sign above the entrance had been replaced with the symbol of the Flame Mercenaries. At this moment, Jinshin and over 100 experts of the Flame Mercenaries had gathered in a majestic discussion hall within the manor to discuss important matters. On the other hand, the Flame Mercenaries were all stationed on a wide plain outside the city. They did not all enter the city. Captain, only 3 of the 6 peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom are willing to submit to us. The other 3 would rather die than submit, Warsky reported as he bowed. Since he was the first one to join the Flame Mercenaries, and the Carnage Mercenaries originally had 3 Earth Saint Masters, Zhang Tian had already become the person with the most authority among the group. Jinshan sat high on the throne as he calmly glanced below. He could not help but smile when he heard Warsky's words. He said, "There are actually 3 organizations that are willing to submit to us. Not bad. They're much more powerful than I had imagined. May I ask which organizations they are?" With that, 2 middle-aged men and an old man immediately walked out from the crowd below. They all clasped their hands at Jinshin. "I am sure Wan Jun, and I represent the Daon clan in joining the Flame Mercenaries. My Daon clan is extremely willing to become a part of the Flame Mercenaries and follow the great captain to glory. I am in situ, and I represent the dominating heaven sect in joining the Flame Mercenaries. I am Dyke Peros, and I represent the Shuelon clan in joining the Flame Mercenaries. The 3 of them were all Earth Saint Masters, and they weren't weak at all. They were all at the 4th and 5th cycle, and the organizations they represented were all peak organizations in the Blue Wind Kingdom. Originally, they all had Heaven Saint Masters, but without exception, all of them had died in the Battle of the Jessen Kingdom. Jinshin nodded in satisfaction as he looked at the respectful representatives of the 3 organizations. He said, "Welcome to the Flame Mercenaries. We'll all be a family in the future. As long as everyone sincerely fights for the Flame Mercenaries, I, Jinshin, swear that I won't mistreat any of you." I now announce that the Daon clan, the dominating heaven sect, and the Shuelon clan will be renamed the Daon Hall, the dominating heaven sect, and the Shuelon Hall. The 3 of you will be the hall masters of your respective halls, responsible for managing the matters of your respective halls. Jinshin did not take away the authority of any of the leaders. After joining the Flame Mercenaries, their authority remained the same as before, except that their goals had changed. All the clans and sects have been renamed as halls. "Thank you for your kindness, Captain." The leaders of the 3 factions cupped their hands and expressed their thanks. Their originally anxious hearts finally settled down. What they were most worried about was that after joining the Flame Mercenary Group, they would lose the authority that originally belonged to them. Jinshan sat on the throne and thought for a while. He said, "Zhang Tian, take a group of people to Yellow Earth City and exterminate the Harito clan there." "Captain, the Harito clan has already left Yellow Earth City. According to reliable sources, they seem to have left the Blue Wind Kingdom." A black-robed old man clasped his hands. "What? The Harito clan has actually left the Blue Wind Kingdom?" Jinshin frowned and sneered. "They sure fled quickly. If I had known earlier that the Harito clan would do something like this, I would have made arrangements in time. Captain, should we send a group of people to chase after the Harito clan? Zhang Tian asked. Jianshun pondered for a while before replying. There's no need. The Harito clan no longer poses any threat to our flame mercenaries unless their old patriarch successfully breaks through to Heaven's Saint Master. However, this is not something that can be done in a short amount of time. Even if their ancestor really does become a Heaven's Saint Master in 20 years, our flame mercenaries will be even more powerful than now. Even if I'm not present, a mere Heaven's Saint Master like him will not be able to pose any threat to our flame mercenaries. Since they have already left the Blue Wind Kingdom, we will let them go for now. Captain, what should we do with the other 3 organizations that would rather die than submit in the Blue Wind Kingdom? An old man stood in the crowd and asked. Jianshun lay on the soft and spacious throne as he rubbed his temples. Ever since the flame mercenaries had developed to a certain scale, he had discovered that his life had become more and more tiring. It was no longer as easy and carefree as before. He could do whatever he wanted by himself. There was no need for him to rack his brains over these problems. Everyone, may I ask if you have any good plans regarding this matter? Jianshun looked at the group of people below. Captain, with the strength of our flame mercenaries, we no longer fear anyone. Since the 3 peak organizations are unwilling to submit, we might as well go all the way and annihilate them all. We'll let the world witness the strength of our flame mercenaries. Captain, we can't do that. The 3 peak organizations of the Blue Wind Kingdom still have 2 Heaven Saint Masters and quite a few Earth Saint Masters. If they work together, they may not be our opponent, but they will definitely heavily injure us. And if we really do that, we'll probably completely anger the royal family of the Blue Wind Kingdom. Once the king sends an army to wipe us out without any regard for the consequences, our flame mercenaries will definitely suffer heavy losses. Captain, the 3 organizations cannot be underestimated. We have no enmity with them either. Since they would rather die than submit, there's no need for us to take the risk of losing our strength to wipe them out. It's not worth it. Everyone voiced their opinions one after another, and there were only 2 outcomes. Either they would send troops to annihilate the 3 major forces, or they would let the 3 major forces go and leave them there without a care in the world. Bai Lian hesitated to one side when she heard everyone's discussion. She said to Jianshun, Brother, we have no enmity with the 3 organizations, so there's no need for us to make them submit. Since they would rather die than submit, let's just ignore them. And there are 2 Heaven Saint Masters among them. If those 2 Heaven Saint Masters go crazy, it'll be enough to heavily injure our flame mercenaries, because we don't have a second Heaven Saint Master other than you. Bai Lian is right. Jianshun, I agree with Bai Lian as well, Yu added. As the 2 of them spoke, the noisy voices in the hall immediately quieted down. This was because all of them understood that these 2 seemingly weak women held a very high position in their leader's heart. Jianshun agreed without any hesitation when he heard Bai Lian and Yu Yu's words. He said, if that's the case, let's not worry about the 3 organizations. All right, today's meeting ends here. Everyone disperse. Once you get back, order people to replenish the supplies. We'll be leaving the Blue Wind Kingdom in 3 days. Yes, leader. Everyone answered in unison and left the hall at the same time. After the meeting was adjourned, Jianshun returned to his room. He laid on his bed and closed his eyes as he rubbed his temples with his hands. As the flame mercenaries rapidly expanded, there were more and more things he had to consider, which made Jianshun feel rather exhausted. At this moment, the door was pushed open and Yu walked in. She had changed into a pink dress and looked at Jianshun, who was rubbing his temples. A sliver of heartache appeared in her eyes as she gently said, Jianshun, isn't managing the mercenaries too tiring? Yeah, it really is rather tiring. The flame mercenaries are rapidly expanding right now, so there are just far too many things that need to be arranged and considered. Only now have I discovered that creating a large organization is actually so difficult. Other than having great strength, management cannot be ignored, Jianshun said with a slight headache. Yu walked over to a chair, sat down. Actually, You can just leave these small matters to your subordinates. Jianshan sighed softly. It's a pity that there aren't many people that I can truly trust. Apart from you guys, there's no one else. Although Ming Dong is the vice captain, I know his personality very well. He's not cut out for this. As for De Gafeng, he doesn't have the ability either, let alone Tai Ta. In the end, it's just you and Bai Lian. Jianshan suddenly opened his eyes and stared at Yu with shining eyes. Yu, I know you've been smart since you were young. Moreover, you grew up in the imperial family and learned many things. If I leave the flame mercenaries to you and Bai Lian, are you confident that you can manage it well? Yu was pleasantly surprised when she heard this. Really? Jianshan, are you really willing to leave the flame mercenaries to me and Bai Lian? Jianshan sat up and stared at Yu seriously. That's right. If you have the ability to manage the mercenaries well, I'll leave it to you. That's fantastic. Jianshan, don't worry. Sister Bai Lian and I definitely won't disappoint you. Yu was extremely excited. Suddenly, Ming Dong appeared at the door. He glanced at Yu with a strange expression. Brother, someone you know has come looking for you. He said to Jianshan strangely. Brother, an acquaintance of yours has come looking for you. Who? Jianshan asked in confusion. Ming Dong chuckled mischievously. You'll know once you go take a look. Jianshan followed Jianshan out of the room in confusion before making his way to the entrance of the manor. Yu followed beside Jianshan. Very soon, Jianshan arrived at the entrance. However, when he saw the acquaintance that Ming Dong had mentioned, his face immediately froze. He was stunned. Chapter 592. Jianshan stared blankly at Huang Wan, who was standing at the entrance. Then, he glanced at Yu from the corner of his eyes and groaned inwardly. He had never thought that Huang Wan would take the initiative to come to him, especially when there was a fiancée who had been betrothed to him by his parents. One was a woman who had deep feelings for Jianshan and had intimate relations with him in the past. The other was his fiancée who had been the talk of the town in the kingdom of Jessen for a long time. Now that the two of them had met, Jianshan immediately felt troubled. Ming Dong obviously realized that Jianshan was in trouble, but he didn't intend to help. He smiled wickedly at Jianshan and said, Brother, I still have something to take care of, so I'll take my leave first. With that, Ming Dong left without any sense of loyalty. Moreover, he would look back every few steps, constantly glancing back and forth between Jianshan, Yu, and Huang Wan. He seemed to be taking pleasure in their misfortune. Jianshan looked at Huang Wan, who was standing at the entrance with a wry smile, and asked, Why are you here? Today, Huang Wan was wearing a set of tight-fitting white clothes, which perfectly outlined her devilish figure. Just her figure alone had a fatal attraction, making people have an impulse to hug her tightly in their arms. Huang Wan's attire was very capable and not sloppy. It was completely different from the attire of the young ladies of large families. At this moment, she looked full of the demeanor of a chivalrous woman. When Huang Wan's cold and sharp gaze fell on Jianshan, it immediately softened and became gentle. She smiled and said, Don't you welcome me here? Huang Wan looked at Jianshan with a gaze that couldn't be concealed. Jianshan smiled wryly. He looked at Huang Wan with a complicated gaze and said, Welcome. Of course you're welcome. Come in and have a seat. Let me do my part as a host. Huang Wan smiled sweetly at Jianshan before swinging the reins in her hand and striding inside. One of the members of the flame mercenaries waiting at the entrance immediately took the reins and led Huang Wan's magical beast away. Huang Wan stopped in front of Jianshan and looked lovingly at the handsome face that she yearned for day and night. Just when she was about to say something, she suddenly discovered that there was an equally beautiful girl standing beside Jianshan. Her gaze immediately landed on Yu, and she asked in confusion, Jianshan, who is this? Hello, I'm Yu. Yu took the initiative to speak. She had a slight smile on her face, but her heart was filled with jealousy. She could naturally see Huang Wan's feelings for Jianshan and understood that their relationship wasn't that simple. Yu, are you the Grand Princess of the Kingdom of Jessen? Huang Wan looked at Yu with some surprise. Yu nodded slightly and smiled. That's right. I'm the Grand Princess. May I ask who this young lady is? Huang Wan's gaze towards Yu immediately changed subtly. There was some undetectable jealousy in the depths of her eyes, but she didn't show it. She smiled and said, "I'm Huang Wan. I'm from the Huang family. So it's Miss Huang Wan. May I ask which kingdom Miss Huang Wan is from?" Yu has heard of a few Huang families. May I know if Yu knows any of them? Yu said with a gentle smile. "I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint the princess. Our Huang family doesn't belong to any kingdom. We've always lived deep in the mountains. We're not one of the few small families with the same name as us in the nearby kingdoms." Huang Wan said. Seeing that the two women had the intention to compete, Jianshun immediately had a headache. He hurriedly said, "Let's not stand outside. Let's go inside and catch up." In a splendidly decorated living room, Jianshun, Yu, and Huang Wan sat at a large round table and chatted. Huang Wan, who had just met Jianshun, was especially happy. She kept talking to Jianshun and curiously asked about the reason why Jianshun formed the mercenary group. Jianshun answered all of Huang Wan's questions to the best of his knowledge. He did not hide anything at all. At this moment, Huang Wan's eyes lit up as if she had thought of something important. She looked into Jianshun's eyes and said, "I almost forgot. Jianshun, there's good news I want to tell you. I've already become the disciple of the ancestor of the Huanggu clan, and he's even passed on his cultivation method, the scripture of the sunflower aqua, to me. It's an extremely rare Saint Tier cultivation method." "What? A Saint Tier cultivation method?" Jianshun was slightly surprised. Although cultivation methods were not as valuable as battle skills on the Tianyuan continent, Saint Tier cultivation methods were still extremely valuable and rare. Even a few hermit clans did not possess a Saint Tier cultivation method. The scripture of the sunflower aqua is a water-attributed cultivation method, and I just happen to possess water-attributed Saint Force, so it's perfect for me. Ever since I started cultivating the scripture of the sunflower aqua, my strength has skyrocketed. It's several times greater than before. I've only cultivated it for a little over 2 months, yet I've already gone from the first cycle to the second cycle. I'm even confident that I can reach the third cycle in half a year. If this continues, I think I'll be able to become a Heaven Saint Master in just a few years. Huang Wan's face was filled with unconcealable excitement. Hearing Huang Wan's words, Yu was extremely shocked. She stared at Huang Wan, who was dressed like a chivalrous woman. She could not believe that Huang Wan, who seemed to be around the same age as her, was actually an Earth Saint Master. Moreover, she cultivated a Saint Tier cultivation method that only existed in legends. But soon after, Yu's face darkened. She became extremely depressed. From what Huang Wan had said, she had already understood that Huang Wan's status was even higher than hers. She was probably the young miss of an extremely large clan. Not only was Huang Wan's cultivation talent greater than hers, she had already reached the Earth Saint Master realm at the same age as her. Moreover, she had an extremely powerful master who had passed down a Saint Tier cultivation method to her. Huang Wan was superior to her in every aspect. Even though she was the princess of an empire, she was not even half as good as Huang Wan. Noticing the change in Yu, Jianshun became slightly worried. He no longer dared to continue chatting with Huang Wan. He ordered someone to prepare a room for Huang Wan before the three of them dispersed. After leaving the room, Yu's mood became extremely depressed. She returned to her room alone and locked herself in there. She sat by her bed and stared blankly at the wall. At this moment, the door was gently pushed open. Jianshun walked in with light steps. Seeing Yu like this, he felt rather sad. Jianshun gently closed the door and walked to Yu's side. He looked at her with concern. He wanted to say something, but he did not know what to say to comfort Yu. Jianshun sighed inwardly. He was not good with flowery words. Facing such a situation, he felt somewhat helpless. Yu's eyes regained some vigor. She looked at Jianshun with a somewhat miserable expression. Her eyes were gradually filled with a layer of mist. In the end, they gathered into 2 crystal-clear teardrops. They slowly flowed down her beautiful cheeks and finally fell to the ground and shattered. Seeing Yu actually crying, Jianshun immediately became flustered. However, before he could speak, Yu Yu had already opened her mouth. Jianshun, tell me. When you told me before that you didn't want to talk about love, was it a lie? Was a reason why you didn't want to marry me because you have another girl in your heart? Is it a girl who is more outstanding than me? Yu Yu was very sad. Her tone was somewhat sobbing. In fact, in her heart, she had already fallen deeply in love with Jianshun. She could not extricate herself. Today, Yu Yu suddenly appeared. She did not hide her deep feelings for Jianshun. Moreover, she was more outstanding than her in all aspects. This made Yu Yu feel a great threat. It was as if the person she loved deeply was about to be snatched away from her. Jianshun intimately held Yu Yu's hand. He held Yu Yu's white and tender hand tightly in his own. He said softly, Yu Yu, things are not what you think. The reason why I'm not in a hurry to marry you is because I can't talk about love right now. I still have a heavy burden on my shoulders. If these things are not resolved, sooner or later, it will bring disaster to the family and you. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. Who knows how many times you've repeated it? Yu Yu sobbed. Jianshun looked at Yu Yu with a complicated expression. Ever since he had known Yu Yu, she had always given him the impression of a calm and steady person. However, this was the first time he had seen Yu Yu cry so sadly. This made him feel a little hurt. Jianshun sighed inside. He knew that there were some things that he needed to be honest with Yu Yu. Otherwise, he would probably break the girl's heart. Yu Yu, although on the surface I seem to be incomparably glorious, not only am I a heaven saint master, but I am also the imperial protector of one of the 8 great nations of the continent. However, do you know that my life is not easy? This is because I have many enemies outside. Jianshun was in a daze as he slowly told the story that he had buried in his mind. Yu Yu's sobs gradually stopped as she stared at Jianshun. I made quite a number of enemies in the Tianyuan continent over the past few years. Although I've destroyed most of them, there are still some powerful forces that I can't touch, including the Shi family and the Jitta family. These 2 clans are both hermit clans on the Tianyuan continent. They are extremely powerful, and there are saint rulers in their clans. I have an irreconcilable enmity with these 2 clans, so it will only end with one of us dead. Either I die, or they live. Moreover, I'm afraid that these 2 clans have been searching for me all this time. Although my current location is very far from them, I know that they will find me here sooner or later. Once they find my location, even if I'm the imperial protector of the Qin Wang kingdom, it will be useless. Therefore, I only want to increase my own strength now. Otherwise, when their Saint King finds me in the future, I will die without a burial place, and will even implicate everyone. Other than them, there is also the sect of Dragon and Tiger that I met in the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. This sect of Dragon and Tiger is also an incomparably powerful sect. Their old sect master is also a saint ruler, and he covets my treasures. Although my identity as the imperial protector of the Qin Empire can temporarily deter him and prevent him from acting against me, who knows if the saint ruler of the sect of Dragon and Tiger will secretly make a move against me. Jianshun looked at Yu Yu with a serious expression and said, Yu Yu, now you should know how much pressure I am facing. My enemies outside are all hermits who have reached the level of saint rulers. I am powerless against them right now. I don't even have the ability to flee. I don't even know how long I have left. Chapter 593. In order to heal the pain in Yu Yu's heart, Jianshun had no choice but to tell her something that even his parents had not told her. This was because Jianshun also understood that if he continued to hide the truth, it would only confirm Yu Yu's thoughts and cause her great pain. This was not something that Jianshun wanted to see. Yu Yu had completely stopped crying when she heard Jianshun's words. 2 crystalline teardrops hung from her beautiful face as she stared at Jianshun in a daze. Only now did she finally understand just how great of a burden Jianshun was shouldering and how great of a danger he was facing. Saint rulers were unimaginably powerful existences in Yu Yu's heart. In her eyes, they were supreme experts that only existed in legends. Many people on the Tianyuan continent would never be able to see them in their entire lives. However, Jianshun had not only provoked 1 saint ruler, but 2 or 3 of them. This made Yu Yu extremely fearful. She deeply worried for Jianshun. Jianshun held Yu Yu's hand tightly. This was the first time he had touched Yu Yu's hand since he had met Yu Yu. Jianshun was in no mood to enjoy the softness of her hand. He stared at Yu Yu and sternly said, Yu Yu, I haven't even told my parents about this. I hope you can keep this a secret from me and don't let them know. Saint rulers are just far too powerful. They're not people that the current Chanyang prefecture and I can deal with. I don't want them to worry about me. Yu Yu stared at Jianshun in a daze. Her sorrowful expression had completely vanished and was replaced with deep worry. I'm sorry, Jianshun. I really didn't know that you were facing so much pressure, Yu Yu sorrowfully said. Jianshun smiled and shook his head slightly. Yu Yu, it's good that you can understand. The enmity between me and those two families cannot be resolved. Before I resolve this matter, I really don't want to waste time on personal matters. After comforting Yu Yu, Jianshun left with a heavy heart. He returned to his room, but as soon as he entered the living room, he suddenly froze. His calm gaze sharpened at that moment, staring at the center of the room like an unsheathed sword. There, a blue-robed person sat at a round table with his back to Jianshun. He drank tea leisurely by himself. The person had long, black hair that draped behind his back. He did not give off any presence at all. He seemed like an ordinary person, extremely ordinary. However, it was this ordinary person that made Jianshun become extremely stern. He immediately became on high alert, as if he was facing a great enemy. This was because he could not sense any presence from the person at all. If it were not for the fact that he could see the person with his eyes, he would have even ignored the person's existence. Only a hermit who had reached Saint Ruler could make him feel this way. Jianshun immediately became extremely nervous when a Saint Ruler suddenly appeared in his room. Who are you? Jianshun asked with a heavy voice. A white piece of jade had already appeared in his right hand that was hidden behind his back. He was powerless against a Saint Ruler with his current strength, so the only thing he could do was ask for help from the ancestor of the Huang family. There's no need to be nervous. Old man has come without warning. Please forgive me if I've disturbed you in any way, said an old voice. An old voice came from the mouth of the blue-robed man. He was still sitting in front of the table in the same posture as before, and he didn't even turn his head. Although the person did not show any hostility, Jianshun did not dare to be careless. He stared at the person's back closely. He asked with a heavy voice, Senior, may I ask who you are? Since you want to know so much, I'll tell you beforehand. That girl must have already told you that she has a master, and I am her master, the person said nonchalantly. Jianshun was slightly surprised. He stared at the person's back in surprise and asked in surprise, Are you the ancestor of the Huanggu clan? Correct, I am Old Man. Jianshun secretly sighed in relief after learning the person's identity. Although a Saint Ruler made him feel very pressured, he had at least confirmed that the person was not an enemy. Little brother, please sit. Let's have a good chat, said the ancestor of the Huanggu clan. Jianshun recovered his composure from before. He strode over to the table and sat before the old man. Only now did Jianshun see the ancestor's true appearance. He was an extremely ordinary-looking old man. His face was covered in wrinkles. The only thing that stood out about him was the blue imprint on his forehead. It was very difficult to see the imprint because of the wrinkles on his forehead. The ancestor looked at Jianshun deeply and said, Little brother, should I call you the imperial protector of the Qin Empire or the fourth young master of the Chanyang prefecture? Or should I call you Jianshun? Senior, just call me Jianshun. Jianshun smiled. The ancestor nodded slightly. Then I'll call you Jianshun. Jianshun, I don't like to beat around the bush, so I'll just get straight to the point. The ancestor of the Huanggu clan paused before continuing. Jianshun, you can say that I've come specially for Huang Wan this time, so what we're going to discuss next is related to her. Jianshun's heart sank slightly. He asked, Senior, have you come for the marriage between Huang Wan and your clan? The ancestor of the Huanggu clan shook his head. Huang Wan's engagement with our Huanggu clan has already been annulled. I obviously won't continue to dwell on this matter. I've come this time for the sake of the girl's future. May I ask Senior's intentions? Jianshun was rather confused by the ancestor's intentions. The ancestor pondered for a while before replying, Jianshun, Huang Wan's constitution is special. It's a rare occurrence on the Tianyuan continent. If we find a suitable water-attributed cultivation method for her, her strength will increase at an extremely rapid rate. As a result, I've taught her a Saint-tier water-attributed cultivation method so that she'll be able to cultivate more efficiently. It won't even be difficult for her to break through to Saint Ruler in the future. However, there's a taboo that must be obeyed, and that is that she cannot lose her virginity before she reaches the 6th cycle of Heaven Saint Master. Otherwise, it will greatly affect her future. The ancestor's face became more and more stern as he reached the end of his speech. Jianshun was originally rather stern as well, but he could not help but blush slightly when he heard the ancestor's last sentence. He smiled awkwardly and said, "Senior, you don't have to worry about that. My relationship with Huang Luan hasn't developed to that level yet." "Yeah, that's for the best." The ancestor nodded in satisfaction and said, "Jianshun, you already know everything you need to know. For the sake of Huang Luan's future, you must abide by this taboo." "I understand, Senior." Jianshun rubbed his nose in a rather awkward manner. At that moment, he could not help but ask himself if he was really a pervert. The ancestor of the Huanggu clan stood up from his chair. "I've accomplished what I came here for. I'll be taking my leave today." With that, the ancestor of the Huanggu clan vanished from the room, vanishing without a trace. Jianshun looked around. The windows and doors were still tightly shut. The entire room was sealed up without any gaps at all. He really could not imagine how the ancestor of the Huanggu clan had managed to leave under such circumstances. Saint Rulers really are powerful. The abilities they possess are beyond our reach, Jianshun murmured. He was filled with deep envy. So Huang Luan has a special constitution that's extremely talented for cultivation. No wonder she's already an Earth Saint Master at such a young age. Several dozen kilometers away, the ancestor turned into an undetectable blur as he shot through the air. He flew off into the distance at an unbelievable speed. Now that I've told him all this, he probably won't try to do anything to Huang Luan anymore. The water spirit's body can finally be preserved perfectly. However, I've already placed a seal in Huang Luan's body, so even if he tries to do anything to her, he won't be able to succeed. The ancestor of the Huanggu clan sneered. He seemed to have succeeded in his scheme. In the blink of an eye, a year had passed. During this year, the Flame Mercenaries had changed the most. During this time, the Flame Mercenaries had never stopped expanding. They had already swallowed up all the first-rate organizations in the surrounding kingdoms, including the Qiangan Kingdom, the Hidden Dragon Kingdom, the Antilles Kingdom, and the Pingyang Kingdom, all of which were enemies of the Jessen Kingdom in the past. As a result, the Flame Mercenaries had become a huge organization that reigned over a region. At the same time, the members of the Flame Mercenaries had expanded from 30,000 to 100,000. There were over 500 Earth Saint Masters and 3 Heaven Saint Masters. They had even recruited 3 Heaven Saint Masters. The scale of the mercenaries was vast, enough to shake up the region. Now, the Flame Mercenaries were known by everyone in a radius of 100,000 kilometers. All the independent mercenaries and small mercenary groups would show envy and admiration when they mentioned the Flame Mercenaries. The Blazing Flame Mercenaries' sudden rise and rapid development all the way to their current scale was a miracle. A large group of people sat on the ground and rested on a desolate plain. Tents had been erected in the surroundings in an orderly fashion. Nearby, over 100 bonfires roared, giving off wisps of smoke. Mercenaries in various attire sat in groups of 3 to 5 before the bonfires, chatting as they roasted the meat of magical beasts on metal forks. Several dozen flags with the image of flames were planted on the ground. These are the flags of the Flame Mercenaries. Jianshun and the others gathered in the largest tent in the center for a meeting. Chapter 594. Jianshun lowered his head in thought when he heard Dugu Feng's suggestion. He knew very well that many powerful mercenary groups had their own cities on the Tianyuan continent. Only by possessing a city that completely belonged to the mercenary group could they gain a foothold on the Tianyuan continent. However, the mercenary groups that possessed cities were all extremely powerful. None of them were weak. Even the current scale of the Flame Mercenaries paled in comparison to them by quite a bit. Although the Flame Mercenaries already had 100,000 members, there were just far too few peak experts who could hold their own. Other than Jianshun, there were only 3 Heaven Saint Masters. It would be very difficult for them to protect the city if they spent a large amount of money and resources on it. Once the city was taken away, they would be the ones to suffer losses. This was because not only were there frequent wars between kingdoms on the Tianyuan continent, but even the cities founded by mercenary groups would often be taken away by more powerful organizations, and there were quite a few of them. Jianshun thought about it for a while before rejecting Dugu Feng's suggestion. He said, "Our Flame Mercenaries may be the ruler of a region right now, but that's only limited to a radius of 100,000 kilometers. It's not suitable for us to establish a city with our current strength. Let's talk about this in the future." That's right. Right now, our Raging Flame Mercenary Group does appear to be extremely powerful, but there's a huge hidden danger within. That's why we need to focus on reorganizing the internal matters of the group. We need to tie the Raging Flame Mercenary Group into a rope in the shortest amount of time. Otherwise, something will happen sooner or later. If the situation becomes serious, the group that we've worked so hard to strengthen might even collapse. Yu said solemnly. If that's the case, we'll focus on reorganizing the internal affairs of the group. Yu, Balian, I'll leave this matter to the two of you. If there's anything you need me to do, feel free to come find me, Jianshun said. During this period of time, he basically left all the miscellaneous matters of the Flame Mercenaries to Yu and Balian. After a year of testing, the two of them were indeed very talented in management, especially Balian. This was especially so for Balian. Although her talent in cultivation was nothing special and she had yet to condense a saint weapon, her intelligence was extremely high. She was much stronger than Yu in terms of management. It was as if she was destined to be an outstanding manager from the moment she was born. "Captain, we've received a secret letter for you." At this moment, a voice rang out from outside. "Bring it in." "Yes, sir." The tent door was opened and Hani, who was dressed in a white robe, walked in. In his hand was a snow-white lightning bird that was about the size of a fist. Jianshun took the lightning bird from Hani's hands and removed a small piece of paper that had been rolled up into a small cylinder from its leg. He then immediately opened it and read it. "There's something important. Return to Chanyang Prefecture as soon as possible." Jianshun's face immediately became rather stern after reading the few words on the slip of paper. Everyone's hearts tightened when they noticed the change in Jianshun's expression. Yu asked in concern, "Jianshun, what's happened?" Jianshun carefully checked the letter and the words on it. Only after confirming that it was not fake did he slowly tear the letter to shreds. He said, "It's a letter from home. I need to return to Chanyang Prefecture immediately. Let's set up camp here for now. Once I return, Crush the mother-child twin rock to notify me if there's anything urgent." Jianshun bid farewell to Yu and the others before finding the 3 Heaven Saint Masters who had joined the Flame Mercenaries. He explained a few things to them before leaving. He flew toward Chanyang Prefecture as quickly as he could. That evening, Jianshun finally returned to Chanyang Prefecture as night fell. As soon as he landed in Chanyang Prefecture, the plainly dressed Changbo appeared before Jianshun like a ghost. "Fourth young master, I never thought you'd return so quickly." Changbo smiled at Jianshun. Jianshun secretly sighed in relief when he saw how relaxed Changbo was. He really had been worried that something had happened when his family had sent him back so urgently. "Changbo, what's so important that you've sent me back so quickly?" Jianshun asked in doubt. "We don't know the specifics, but the people from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom have come. They said that they have something extremely important to report to you and that they can't waste a single moment. That's why the Patriarch sent you back so urgently," Changbo explained. He was also very doubtful inside. The Heavenly Eagle Kingdom? Hasn't it already been destroyed? Jianshun was slightly surprised. Changbo laughed involuntarily and chuckled. "I didn't explain it clearly. Please don't blame me, fourth young master." This time, one of the leaders of the 7 great organizations from the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom has personally come. He says that he has something extremely important to report to you. "Fourth young master, he's in the discussion hall right now. Let's go." Soon after, Jianshan and Chang Bo shuttled through Chanyang Prefecture together and headed straight for the discussion hall. Along the way, all the guards and servants who brushed past them all bowed respectfully. Jianshan quickly arrived at the discussion hall and discovered that it was already filled with people. His father, Chanyang Ba, his mother, Bai Yun Tian, and many other senior figures of Chanyang Prefecture were all gathered here. They were chatting enthusiastically with a burly middle-aged man. Jianshan was discovered as soon as he entered the hall. Immediately, everyone in the hall stood up and greeted Jianshan with smiles on their faces. Everyone in Chanyang Prefecture looked at Jianshan with eyes full of pride. The middle-aged man who was chatting with the people in Chanyang Prefecture also strode in front of Jianshan and bowed respectfully. The leader of the Blood Moon mercenary group, Kainai Sai, greets the Imperial Protector. After the disbandment of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, the territory was divided into 7, and the Blood Moon mercenary group was one of the 7 great organizations. Jianshan looked at Kainai Sai and said, "Kainai Sai, you must be looking for me for something important. I wonder what happened over there." Kainai Sai looked around and said hesitantly, "Lord Imperial Protector, this matter is highly confidential, so..." Jianshan understood and said, "If that's the case, then let's go to my residence to discuss it." "Yes, Lord Imperial Protector." Jianshan looked at Chanyang Ba and Bai Yun Tian and said, "Father, Mother, I have something important to do, so I'll take my leave first." Xiang leader Kainai Sai traveled thousands of miles to Chanyang Prefecture, so this matter must be very important. You don't have to worry about us. Go take care of your own matters first. Chanyang Ba said with a smile. Xiang important matters are more important. You should go take care of your own matters first. Bai Yun Tian also said gently. She also felt very proud to have such an outstanding and filial son. Jianshan exchanged a few words with the people in the hall, then brought Kainai Sai back to his own resting place. Kainai Sai, I wonder what important matter you have to report to me? Has the sect of Dragon and Tiger done something to you? Jianshan sternly asked Kainai Sai. Kainai Sai shook his head and looked around cautiously. He then moved his mouth close to Jianshan's ear and said softly, "Lord Imperial Protector, we've discovered a large tungsten alloy mine in a mountain range." "What did you say? You've discovered a large tungsten alloy mine?" A gleam of light flashed through Jianshan's eyes as he softly exclaimed. Tungsten alloy was a rare metal on the Tianyuan continent. It was 10 times more valuable than purple coins. A kilogram of tungsten alloy or could be exchanged for 10 kilograms of purple coins. Yes, Lord Imperial Protector. Our Blood Moon mercenaries accidentally discovered it in a mountain range. After a preliminary investigation, we've confirmed that it's a large tungsten alloy mine. The purity is extremely rare on the Tianyuan continent. Just the ore that appeared on the surface has reached a terrifying 85% purity, Kainai Sai excitedly said. Jianshan gasped. He had also been shocked by the purity. 85% purity meant that 100 kilograms of, or could be refined into 85 kilograms of tungsten alloy. How many people know about this? Jianshan suddenly became extremely stern. I've already executed a portion of the people who know about this. There are less than 50 people who know about it right now, and they're all trustworthy people. At the same time, I've sealed off all information regarding the tungsten alloy mine, Kainai Sai sternly said. Jianshan secretly let out a sigh of relief inside. A large tungsten alloy mine with high purity represented an immeasurable amount of wealth. If the news were spread, it would definitely lead to a storm of blood. This was because this was a mine that was 10 times more valuable than a mine that could yield purple coins. Lord Imperial Protector, the tungsten alloy mine is extremely valuable. It will definitely attract a large number of foreign organizations. With just the strength of our 7 organizations, it's impossible for us to protect this mine. Lord Imperial Protector, what do you think we should do about this? Do you want the Qin Empire to intervene immediately? Jianshan pondered for quite a while before replying. Since the news of the tungsten alloy mine has not been leaked yet, let's continue to keep it secret. Kainai Sai, go back immediately and personally guard the mine with the people from the 7 organizations. At the same time, organize people to secretly mine it. Remember, the fewer people who know about this, the better. Do not leak this information. I'll be back soon. Yes, Lord Imperial Protector, Kai Nisai replied with clasped hands. Chapter 595. Kai Nisai immediately left Chanyang Prefecture and hurried back to his territory. The appearance of the tungsten alloy mine was a matter of great importance. It was an inestimable amount of wealth, so Jianshun did not dare to be careless. Without a heaven sent master guarding it, Jianshun found it very difficult to relax. He was afraid that the news would leak out. Jianshun walked around the center of the room with his hands behind his back with a stern expression. He constantly thought about the tungsten alloy mine. On his shoulder, the little white tiger that was inseparable from him was lying there quietly. Its originally bright eyes had become dull and lifeless, and it looked listless and listless. Looks like I need to move the flame mercenaries to the territory of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom as soon as possible, Jianshun thought to himself. Jianshun remained in the room by himself for almost an hour. He only left when Bai Yuntian personally came to call him for dinner. The table was filled with sumptuous dishes. Jianshun, Changyangba, Bai Yuntian, and his 3 aunts all sat at the same table and chatted as they ate. Ling Long, Yu Fengyan, and Bai Yuntian had mentioned the flame mercenaries before. They had known about Jianshun's flame mercenaries a long time ago, but they were extremely confused about why Jianshun, the imperial protector of both the Kingdom of Jessen and the Qin Empire, would lower himself to create a mercenary group. In response to Bai Yuntian's and his 2 aunts' questions, Jianshun patiently explained the reason. He didn't hide anything, as there was no secret worth hiding. Xiang'er's actions are correct. Since Captain Kindle died to save you, you should fulfill your promise and give him an explanation, Changyangba said. Xiang'er, you've been outside for the past few days. Do you have any news about your second sister? Bai Yuntian suddenly asked. Jianshun's eyes dimmed when he heard that. He gently sighed and shook his head. Mother, I've been constantly looking for news about my second sister, but there's been no news at all. Yu Fengyan's expression changed when she heard that. Sorrow filled her face. That damned girl. Who knows where she's gone to hide? No matter what, she should have come back to tell us that she's safe. We don't even have any news about her right now. I wonder if Mingwei is she? Towards the end, Yu Fengyan could not help but sob softly. Her daughter had left alone for so long without any news. As a mother, Yu Fengyan was both worried and afraid. She was afraid that something had really happened to her only daughter outside. The people at the table all fell silent. Their faces were rather heavy. The people present were either Changyang Mingyue's parents or aunts. They had all watched Changyang Mingyue grow up. Now that Changyang Mingyue had encountered such a situation, they felt extremely worried. After all, Changyang Mingyue was not Jianshun. Auntie, don't take it too hard. My sister is lucky. She won't be in any danger. Look at me. Didn't I leave the Kingdom of Jessen alone a few years ago without any news? Aren't I still living well? Jianshun comforted. However, his words were destined to have no effect at all. Yu Fengyan and the others did not believe that their daughter possessed the same ability as Jianshun. Moreover, it was much more dangerous for a woman to wander alone than a man. There was no lack of lecherous people among the mercenaries who made a living on the Tian-Yuan continent. Sai, our daughter has grown up. She's become rebellious, but it's all our fault. We were the ones who forced Mingyue's marriage, which was why she left home. Changyangba sighed as well. He felt extremely regretful. Father, Auntie, don't worry. I will definitely send more people to search for my sister, Jianshun firmly said. Changyang Mingyue had always cared for him when he was young. She was the only sibling who had left a good impression on him. Now that something like this had happened to her, Jianshun felt extremely uncomfortable. Whatever. Let's not talk about this for now. We've already discussed this matter countless times, but it's all useless. Changyangba let out a long sigh before looking at Jianshun. After a moment of thought, he said, Xiang'er, there's something I hope you can agree to. I know everything about you and your auntie, Ling Long. Although your auntie is a little petty and has made things difficult for you more than once, she's not a bad person. Ever since what happened last time, Your auntie and your brother seem to have completely changed. They haven't eaten with us in a very long time because they feel very guilty. As a result, I hope you can forgive your auntie." Chanyang Ba spoke with a pleading tone. As the patriarch of the family, it was extremely rare for him to treat his own son like this. Jianshan agreed to Chanyang Ba's suggestion without much hesitation. Although he was also very dissatisfied with his auntie, they were still a family after all. Jianshan did not want to ruin a warm family that was hard to come by because of his own insistence. Seeing that Jianshan was no longer looking into by Yu Shuang's past mistakes, Chanyang Ba was extremely happy. Afterwards, Jianshan took out the 100 herbs wine that the Ape King had gifted him from his space ring and poured a cup for everyone at the table. After drinking the 100 herbs wine, everyone's strength experienced a qualitative leap. Chanyang Ba, who had only reached the first cycle of Earth Saint Master 3 months ago, directly broke through to the peak of the second cycle. He would reach the third cycle very soon. As for Bai Yushuang and Ling Long, they had both reached the high tier of Saint Master. Even Bai Yun Tian, who did not know any Saint Force, had benefited greatly. Her Radiant Saint Master cultivation had increased from the third to the fourth cycle, which was equivalent to several years of hard work. Afterwards, Jianshan called Changbo in and had Changbo taste a cup as well. However, it was only a small cup of the 100 herbs wine. To a Heaven Saint Master like Changbo, its effects were almost negligible. It could only strengthen the Saint Force within his body. He did not break through as smoothly as Principal Kaffir. After the meal, Jianshan chatted with his parents for a while before going to visit his brother, Changyang Hu. Currently, Changyang Hu could only lie in bed all day. Having lost his arm, he even needed others to help him eat and change his clothes. He could not take care of himself at all, living a miserable life. Seeing his brother's miserable state, Jianshan felt very pained inside. He was tempted to immediately advance to the 7th Radiant Saint Master and use a heaven-defying method to regrow his brother's arm. The next morning, he went to Lore City to visit Ken San and his mother. With the help of the Chanyang Prefecture, Ken San and his mother had opened a rather large inn on a bustling street in Lore City. Business was booming, and they were filled to the brim with customers every day. With the protection of the Chanyang Prefecture, their inn had become the safest inn in Lore City. No one dared to fight inside, and all the merchants and mercenaries who ate or stayed there were well behaved. After bidding farewell to Ken San and his mother, Jianshan left Lore City. After several hours of flight, he finally arrived at the desolate area where the flame mercenaries were stationed. He immediately gathered everyone together. "Jianshan, why have you called for us in such a hurry?" Ming Dong could not help but ask out of curiosity as soon as everyone sat down in the tent. Jianshan sternly sat at the head of the table and ordered, "Pass down my orders. Everyone is to immediately break camp and set off for the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom through the night." Everyone was surprised. Princess Yu Yu asked in doubt, "Through the night? Jianshan, is there a need to be in such a hurry?" Jianshan nodded sternly. "There is, and the sooner the better. Lead the group and hurry over. I need to take a step forward, so I won't be traveling with you." "Jianshan, why have you suddenly become so anxious? Has something important happened there?" Ming Dong asked. "I'll keep this a secret for now. I'll tell you slowly once you arrive." "All right, the meeting is adjourned. Go make arrangements immediately. I'll be leaving first." With that, Jianshan immediately left and hurried to the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. There was no time to waste. 2 days later, Jianshan finally arrived at the territory of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom. He then recalled how he had divided the territories among the 7 major powers before heading directly to the territory of the Blood Moon Mercenary Group. The Blood Moon Mercenary Group had already become a major power that dominated a region. Jianshan casually asked around in the territory of the Blood Moon Mercenary Group and found out where their headquarters were. He then hurried without stopping to rest. The headquarters of the Blood Moon Mercenary Group was a newly built castle. As Jianshan did not conceal his aura, Kai Nisai, who had just returned to the castle, discovered him as soon as he arrived above the castle. Kai Nisai immediately flew out of the castle and arrived before Jianshan. He cupped his hands and said, Greetings, Imperial Protector. What's the current situation? The matter of the tungsten alloy vein hasn't been leaked, right? Jinshin asked in a low voice. Reporting to the Imperial Protector, everything is under control. The news of the tungsten alloy vein has been tightly sealed. Apart from a few dozen trustworthy brothers, no one else knows about it. Even the people from the other 6 major powers are completely unaware, Kai Nisai said. Jinshin nodded in satisfaction and said, "Not bad. You've done well. You've done a great service this time. I won't treat you unfairly." To be able to serve the Qin Empire and the respected Imperial Protector is Kai Nisai's honor. Kai Nisai has no other requests. Kai Nisai said with a solemn expression. Jinshin smiled and said, "Where is the tungsten alloy vein? Bring me there immediately." Chapter 596. The location where the tungsten alloy vein was discovered was not far from the headquarters of the Blood Moon mercenaries. It was only 50 kilometers behind the castle. There was a deep forest that stretched for several hundred kilometers. The environment inside was vile, filled with poisonous insects, ferocious beasts, swamps, and miasma. There were even a few magical beasts living there. The exact location of the tungsten alloy vein was at the center of the forest, at the bottom of a large canyon. In the evening, the sun had already completely disappeared from the horizon. The sky was dusky and visibility was extremely low. At this moment, 2 streaks of light, one green and one yellow, streaked across the sky like meteors. They quickly arrived above the canyon and floated there. It was Jinshin and Kai Nisai. As soon as the two appeared, several figures flickered in the forest below. They quickly arrived below Jinshin and Kai Nisai and cupped their hands toward the two in the sky. "Captain!" Kai Nisai turned his head to Jinshin and said, "Sir Imperial Protector, they are all Earth Saint Masters. I have arranged for them to guard this place, to prevent anyone from coming here and leaking information about the tungsten alloy vein." Jinshin's gaze swept past the people below and nodded in satisfaction. He gently smiled and said, "You've done well." Kai Nisai chuckled and said to the people below, "The few of you go hide yourselves. Keep a close eye on the surroundings. If anyone comes close, kill them without mercy." "Yes," the Earth Saint Masters below replied in unison. They then turned into several shadows and disappeared in a few flashes. They had already hidden themselves in the surroundings of the canyon. "Imperial Protector, we accidentally discovered the tungsten alloy vein at the bottom of the canyon," Kai Nisai said. "Come, let's go down and take a look." Jinshin's body quickly descended to the bottom of the canyon. The area at the bottom of the canyon was not large. It was narrow and long, just like a ravine. The surroundings were filled with 2 to 3 meters long weeds. Jinshin hovered in the air above the weeds and examined the surroundings. He then slowly closed his eyes and released his consciousness without holding back. It covered a radius of 15 kilometers and penetrated all obstacles to investigate the scenery within the rocks. Under the observation of Jinshin's consciousness, the surrounding rocks seemed to be nothing more than decorations to Jinshin. They did not obstruct him in the slightest. However, when he saw the situation within, he could not help but gasp even with his mental fortitude. This was indeed a large tungsten alloy vein, and the purity was exactly as Kai Nisai had described, reaching a terrifying 85% purity. Furthermore, the amount of tungsten alloy ore stored within the range of his divine sense left him flabbergasted. This was because within the range of his divine sense, all he could see were tungsten alloy veins beneath the 5-meter-thick rock layer. Furthermore, beyond the range of his divine sense, there were many tungsten alloy ores that he had yet to discover. In short, the amount of tungsten alloy ores stored here had reached a shocking level. After learning about the situation hidden within the rocks, Jinshin gasped. At this moment, his originally calm heart could not help but violently beat. At this moment, the excitement in his heart had reached an extreme level. Jinshin suppressed the surging excitement in his heart and continued to extend his consciousness into the ground. I want to see just how many tungsten alloy ores were hidden underground. Jinshin's consciousness quickly invaded the ground and soon reached a depth of 10 kilometers. Wherever his consciousness swept, it was all high-purity tungsten alloy ores. Moreover, the deeper he went, the higher the purity of the tungsten alloy ores. When Jinshin's consciousness reached a depth of 10 kilometers, the purity of the tungsten alloy ores had increased from 85% to 90%. If the purity reached 100%, it would not be called tungsten alloy ores, but a complete tungsten alloy. Jinshin's mind, which had finally calmed down with great difficulty, began to fluctuate violently again. He was so excited that his body trembled slightly. Immediately, Jinshin did not stop his consciousness from continuing to extend and continued to extend it even deeper. 11 kilometers, 12 kilometers, 13 kilometers, 14 kilometers. Soon, Jinshin's consciousness had spread to the limit and reached a range of 15 kilometers. However, at this moment, Jinshin's expression changed slightly and he let out a soft sound of surprise. 15 kilometers underground, Jinshin's consciousness actually detected an extremely powerful energy fluctuation. It was like a boundary that prevented Jinshin's consciousness from penetrating. Moreover, this place had already reached the limit of Jinshin's consciousness expansion. He could only observe the outermost layer of the energy that had appeared underground. He had no idea how big this energy was. What is that? Jinshin thought. He was extremely curious about the energy that he had unexpectedly discovered underground. It was a pity that his current consciousness could only extend to a range of 15 kilometers, so he was unable to observe the energy any further. The senses of Jinshin's soul circled around the ball of energy hidden underground for a while before slowly withdrawing it. He hovered above the grass with a frown as he stared at the ground. Just what was the mysterious energy that had appeared underground that had piqued his curiosity, completely suppressing his joy from the tungsten alloy mine? If only my consciousness could be a little stronger. Although I can't penetrate the energy, I can at least wrap it around and see what it is, Jinshin thought. Kai Nisai arrived beside Jinshin and looked at Jinshin in confusion. He frowned and asked, "Sir Imperial Protector, what's wrong?" Kai Nisai, does this canyon have any history or legends of the past? Jinshin stared at Kai Nisai with bright eyes. Kai Nisai shook his head without thinking and flatly replied, "No, at least I haven't heard of it." Jinshin sighed gently before flying out of the gorge. He continued to use the senses of his soul to investigate the amount of tungsten alloy in the surroundings of the gorge. However, when he arrived 20 kilometers away from the gorge, the purity of the tungsten alloy gradually decreased from 85% to 50%. Only when he was 50 kilometers away from the gorge did the tungsten alloy completely disappear. All that was left was rock and mud. Jinshin flew around the canyon and finally confirmed that the tungsten alloy vein had spread out in a circle with the canyon as the center. The diameter of the circle was about 100 kilometers, and all the tungsten alloy within 100 kilometers was tungsten alloy. The tungsten alloy at the center of the canyon had the highest purity, reaching at least 85%. After personally investigating the tungsten alloy vein, Jinshin and Kai Nisai returned to the headquarters of the Blood Moon Mercenaries. The headquarters of the Blood Moon Mercenaries was a huge castle. At this moment, Jinshin, Kai Nisai, and a few trustworthy members of the upper echelon of the mercenaries were secretly discussing the tungsten alloy vein on the highest floor of the castle. The tungsten alloy vein must be excavated as soon as possible. At the same time, the news must be completely sealed. Not even the slightest bit of news can be leaked out. Kai Nisai, you must immediately arrange this matter. Jinshin sternly said, "Sir Imperial Protector, even though this is an unrefined or its purity is far too high, coupled with the wondrous properties of tungsten alloy, its hardness is much greater than refined steel. The difficulty of excavating it is extremely great. With just the strength of our Blood Moon mercenaries, we probably won't be able to excavate much in a year." The one who spoke was a black-robed old man. He was an Earth Saint Master and one of the founding members of the Blood Moon Mercenaries. "Sir Imperial Protector, I've already notified the leaders of the other 6 territories. They should be arriving very soon. Do you think we should tell the 6 of them about this and have them work together to choose a trustworthy person to excavate the ore? Kai Nisai suggested. That's right. That's exactly what I was thinking. Once the 6 of them arrive, let's tell them about this. Jianchun said. Over half a day later, the Heaven Saint Masters of the other 6 territories came to the headquarters of the Blood Moon mercenaries to see Jianchun. After the leaders of the 7 territories had gathered, Jianchun and the 7 of them began a secret discussion. They discussed the operation of the tungsten alloy vein and how to keep it a secret. This time, the meeting lasted for a very long time. Jianchun and the 7 Heaven Saint Masters discussed from the afternoon until late into the night. They discussed the various aspects of mining, transportation, refining, and keeping a secret. The next day, Kai Nisai immediately arranged for a group of around 500 people to enter the mountains to excavate or under the pretext of hunting magical beasts. At the same time, the leaders of the other 6 territories also sent word back, dispatching trustworthy people from different places to the mountain range. Under the combined efforts of the 7 organizations, the news of the tungsten alloy vein was perfectly covered up. At the same time, the mining operation officially began. Under Jianchun's orders, they began to excavate from the gorge. Jianchun was extremely curious about the mysterious energy 10 kilometers below the gorge. However, there was nothing he could do when faced with the tough tungsten alloy, or he could only dig out a path manually. The following days were extremely peaceful. In order to cover up the news of the tungsten alloy vein, only Jianchun remained in the area. Including Kai Nisai, the leaders of the 7 organizations remained in their own territories and did not venture out. This was to prevent people with ulterior motives from noticing something and causing the news to leak out. Although that was the case, the 7 of them still had communication tools on them. As soon as something happened to the tungsten alloy vein, they would be able to rush to the territory of the Blood Moon mercenaries as quickly as possible. 10 days later, the large group of people from the Flame mercenaries arrived at the Blood Moon mercenaries' territory. In the end, they temporarily set up camp in the headquarters of the Blood Moon mercenaries. With the addition of 3 Heaven Saint Masters and almost 500 Earth Saint Masters, the strength of the Blood Moon mercenaries' territory had greatly increased. Jianchun did not hide the news of the tungsten alloy vein from Ming Dong and the others, but he only told them to a few trustworthy people. Even War Sky and the 3 Heaven Saint Masters, who had joined the Flame mercenaries later on, did not know anything about it. However, when Ming Dong and the others learned that there was a huge tungsten alloy vein, all of them dropped their jaws in shock. Such a large tungsten alloy mine is extremely rare on the Tianyuan continent. Once the news of this spreads, it will definitely cause a huge commotion. At that time, even some of the hermit clans and the 8 great kingdoms of the Tianyuan continent will interfere. It'll be very difficult for us to protect it with just our strength, Huang Luan sternly said. Jianchun sternly nodded. We've already sealed off the news. If the news really does leak out in the future, I can only get the Qin Empire to take action. Chapter 597. Jianchun's eyes lit up when he heard Huang Luan's suggestion. Although he did not know what heavenly layer the ancestor of the Huang family was at, he at least knew that the ancestor of the Huang family was able to fend off 2 saint rulers from the Hongfu clan all by himself. It was not difficult to guess just how powerful the ancestor of the Huang family was just from this. If a powerful saint ruler like that appeared to assist him, he would be able to deter quite a few people. If there really is a need when the time comes, I really might need to ask your ancestor to come out and keep watch. Jianchun smiled at Huang Luan. Aside from the 4 imperial protector of the Qin Empire, he only had a relationship with the ancestor of the Huang family. Obviously, he would not miss out on such a great helper. Jianchun's uncle Tian was unfathomably powerful, but he knew that it was impossible for him to invite someone like that. At the same time, Ming Dong's uncle Tian was not too willing to interfere with these miscellaneous matters. Even the tungsten alloy mine, which was worth more than purple coins, was not enough to tempt him. The news of the tungsten alloy mine was completely sealed off. Not a single piece of information leaked out. Other than Jinshin's group, only the leaders of the 7 territories and the people responsible for mining the tungsten alloy knew about it. All the people responsible for mining the tungsten alloy had their storage equipment confiscated to prevent people from using communication tools to spread the news. At the same time, their range of movement had been restricted. They were only allowed to move within a radius of 10 kilometers of the gorge and were forbidden from stepping outside. All the members of the Flame Mercenaries were stationed in the territory of the Blood Moon Mercenaries. However, when the leaders of the 7 organizations learned that the mercenaries were led by Jinshin, they all announced that they would join the Flame Mercenaries. With the addition of the 7 of them, the Flame Mercenaries' strength skyrocketed once again. They completely took over the territory of the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom and made up for the lack of peak experts. Now, aside from Jinshin, there were 10 Heaven Saint Masters in the Flame Mercenaries. They had become the most powerful mercenary group in a radius of several tens of thousands of kilometers and were renowned across the region. The following days were extremely peaceful. The tungsten alloy mine continued to be mined in an orderly manner, obtaining large amounts of pure tungsten alloy every day. It made Jinshin and the upper echelon of the Flame Mercenaries so happy that they could not close their mouths. Once we've mined all the tungsten alloy, we'll definitely build a city completely forged from tungsten alloy. Ming Dong said this more than once. He was extremely excited. If we use tungsten alloy to build a city, it will be the strongest city on the Tianyuan continent without a doubt. It's equivalent to the 7 super cities. De Gufeng, who rarely spoke, would also constantly sigh emotionally. His eyes were filled with anticipation. We also need to use tungsten alloy to forge large amounts of armor and create the most powerful warriors. Bai Lian also cried out in excitement more than once. Everyone had already thought of how to use the tungsten alloy in the future. They were just waiting for the tungsten alloy to be mined. Once the amount reached a certain standard, they would immediately begin. In the blink of an eye, Jinshin had already stayed in the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom for 3 months. During these 3 months, nothing unexpected had happened. The matter of the tungsten alloy mine had been tightly sealed, causing Jinshin's group, who had been on edge all day, to worry for nothing. In the morning, Jinshin slowly opened his eyes as he sat on his bed. He turned his head to look at the scenery outside the window, as he could not help but think of Little Fatty, whom he had met in Longevity Valley. Back then, I promised Little Fatty that I would visit him in Longevity Valley a year later. It's almost been a year and a half now. Looks like it's time for me to visit Longevity Valley. Jinshin softly murmured to himself before leaving his room. A few months ago, he had wanted to return to Longevity Valley to see Little Fatty. It was just that he had too many things on hand and could not find the time to do so. Now that the tungsten alloy mine would not have too many problems for the time being, he finally had the time to make a trip back to Longevity Valley. After leaving his room, Jinshin immediately gathered his trusted subordinates and told them that he would be leaving for a period of time. "Jinshin, where are you going?" "Let me go with you," Huang Wan said. She was extremely unwilling to part with Jinshin. Jinshin shook his head. "I have important matters to attend to in Mercenary City. I'll be back very soon. It's best if you all stay here." Huang Wan was disappointed when she heard that. "Jinshin, come back soon." Yu Yu looked at Jinshin reluctantly. Although she didn't want to be separated from Jinshin, she knew that this was unavoidable. Jinshin nodded. "If nothing unexpected happens, I'll be back very soon." Ming Dong came to Jinshin's side and patted Jinshin's shoulder. With a serious face, he said, "Brother, since you insist on going, we can't stop you. But you have to be careful. If you meet anyone from the Jitta family or the Sure family, go to Mercenary City. They won't dare to make a move there." Jinshin chuckled. "Don't worry, I know how to deal with these matters. But unless the saint rulers of the 2 families come personally, they won't be able to stop me." Bai Lian suddenly hugged Jinshin's arm and said sweetly, "Brother, I have a small wish that I hope you can fulfill." Seeing Bai Lian act like a spoiled child, Jinshin smiled and said, "What is it? If I can do it, I'll definitely fulfill it." Jianshan loved this little sister of his very much. Balian's bright eyes suddenly fell on the white tiger on Jianshan's shoulder. She giggled. "Brother, can you leave little white behind? Let play with us." The white tiger was very intelligent and seemed to understand Balian's words. It jumped from Jianshan's left shoulder to his right shoulder as if it had been electrocuted, avoiding Balian. Its two small tiger claws tightly wrapped around Jianshan's neck as it stared at Balian with vigilance. The white tiger's behavior infuriated Balian. She glared at the white tiger angrily with her hands on her hips. She said angrily, "Little white, am I really that scary? So much for feeding you so much roasted meat these past few days, and this is how you repay me? You won't even let me hug you." Ooh. The white tiger seemed to be rather aggrieved as it made a sound that no one could understand. It hugged Jianshan's neck even tighter, clearly unwilling to be separated from Jianshan. "Forget it, Balian. Little White and Jianshan are inseparable. If you want to keep Little White by your side, it'll be harder than ascending to the heavens." Yu chuckled while covering her mouth. "Balian, looks like I won't be able to fulfill your wish because I can't force Little White to do something it doesn't want to do." Jianshan smiled apologetically. "AI, then forget it." Balian gloomily glared at Little White. Her face was filled with disappointment. Afterwards, Jianshan bid farewell to everyone and left with the white tiger. Originally, he wanted to leave the white tiger here and did not want to take the white tiger with him. After all, he had to pass through Mercenary City on his way to Longevity Valley, so he could not guarantee his safety. However, it was a pity that the white tiger insisted on following him. No matter what he did, he could not convince the white tiger to follow Jianshan no matter what. In the end, he had no choice but to take the white tiger with him. The weather today was especially good. The sun shone brightly, and there were no clouds in the sky. The entire sky was blue. Jianshan flew several thousand meters in the air, heading directly to the Great Zhou country. He planned on using the space gate in the Great Zhou country to head to Mercenary City. Perhaps because the white tiger's strength had increased, its sense of smell was much stronger than before. Whenever Jianshan flew through the forest, it would discover a few heavenly treasures hidden in the weeds or buried in the ground. Moreover, they were all over 1,000 years old, which made Jianshan sigh in amazement. The white tiger's abilities were just as Rum Guinness had said. It was extremely powerful when it came to finding heavenly treasures. After several days of traveling, Jianshan finally approached the border of the Great Zhou country. However, when he was about to enter the Great Zhou country, he suddenly stopped. He floated in the air and thought for a while before turning around and flying in another direction. After several hours of flying, Jianshan was already far away from the Great Zhou country. He arrived in the Zhuya Kingdom, the neighboring country of the Great Zhou country. He finally entered a first-class city in the Zhuya Kingdom called Walrant City. In Walrant City, Jianshan stopped in a secluded alleyway. Then he followed the memories in his head and quickly stopped in front of a mansion. Jianshan stood outside the mansion in a daze as he stared at the sign above the gate with the words Tianqin Clan written on it. These words seemed to have some kind of magic, actually bringing Jianshan's thoughts back to a scene from several years ago. It made Jianshan think of the first time he and Jianshan had come to this city. When he first came to Walrant City, the thing that left the deepest impression on Jianshan was meeting his brother, Qin Xiao. Hey, what are you doing? Why are you standing in front of our Tianqin clan's gate like an idiot? Quickly leave this place. Don't keep standing here and block the road. While Jianshan was in a daze, a guard at the gate came to his side and impatiently yelled at him. Jianshan, who was immersed in his memories, was awakened. Looking at the burly man beside him, he cupped his hands with a faint smile and said, "I wonder if your Tianqin clan's young master Qin Xiao is here?" Hearing this, the guard looked over Jianshan. Seeing that Jianshan was wearing luxurious clothes and had an extraordinary appearance, he immediately stopped looking down on him and asked, "Who are you?" "Our young master Qin Xiao is not someone that just anyone can meet. This one is Jianshan. I am a friend of your young master Qin Xiao." Jianshan cupped his hands and said, although the other party was only a guard, he still treated him with a normal heart. "What? You are Jianshan?" Chapter 598. Jianxin once again visited the Tianqin clan and was warmly received by them. The patriarch of the Tianqin clan personally received Jianxin in the discussion hall with a few elders. After all, the Tianqin clan did not dare to put on any airs in front of a mercenary king who had obtained first place in the mercenary tournament. At the same time, Jianxin finally saw Qin Xiao after so many years. Although so much time had passed, Qin Xiao's appearance had not changed at all. He was the same as before. The only thing that had changed was that he had broken through to Earth Saint Master. "Hey, Jianxin, you finally come. If you still didn't come, I would have gone out to find you." Qin Xiao was clearly extremely happy when he saw Jianxin. He rushed up and hugged Jianxin. Jianxin seriously studied Qin Xiao and agreed, "Not bad. You're an Earth Saint Master now. Your talent really is extraordinary. If I remember correctly, you should only be 30 years old right now." TSK. Reaching Earth Saint Master at 30 years of age is quite a genius on the entire Tian Yuan continent. Xiao, Earth's talent really is quite good. He's the person with the most potential in our Zhuya kingdom, and half a year ago, the king betrothed his daughter to Xiao. Quite a few other large organizations in the Zhuya kingdom have come to propose marriage as well. The patriarch of the Tianqin clan chuckled. The patriarch of the Tianqin family chuckled. When he talked about his son, there was unconcealable pride on his face. "Really? Qin Xiao, you're already engaged?" Jianxin stared at Qin Xiao in surprise. Qin Xiao revealed a rare expression of embarrassment. He chuckled. "The wedding date has already been set. I'll be marrying the third princess of the Zhuya kingdom in 2 years. Jianxin, you and Mingdong have to come to my wedding when the time comes." Of course. "We'll definitely come," Jianxin chuckled. He felt happy for Qin Xiao inside as well. Afterwards, Jianxin and Qin Xiao made their way out of the hall. They strolled through the estate of the Tianqin clan as they chatted. At this moment, Qin Xiao suddenly said, "Jianxin, I'm also an Earth Saint Master now. Although I'm not as powerful as Brother Mingdong, I can still hold my own. I just happen to have nothing to do in the clan anyway. So why don't I go roaming the Tian Yuan continent with you in the future?" "Sure. I just happen to have formed a mercenary group, but I lack trustworthy people. If you're willing, why don't you join my mercenary group?" Jianxin chuckled. Qin Zhao's eyes lit up. "I was just about to bring up the idea of forming a mercenary group with you. Since you've already done it, it'll save me a lot of effort." "All right, Jianxin, when are we leaving? I've been bored to death in the clan for the past few months. I wanted to leave a long time ago." Jianxin shook his head with a bitter smile when he saw how impatient Qin Xiao was. He said, "It'll probably take a while because I have some matters to attend to in Mercenary City. Once I'm done, I'll take you to the mercenary group I've formed." Suddenly, the gentle sound of a zither rang out from up ahead. It was beautiful and pleasing to the ear. The notes seemed to form a melody that seemed to possess some sort of magical power, immediately attracting the attention of Jianxin and Qin Xiao. The two of them could not help but stop talking. The slight excitement that filled their hearts for meeting each other was slowly soothed by the gentle sound of the zither, allowing them to become as calm as still water. In the pavilion in front of him, a woman in a white dress was sitting there, playing a zither. She seemed to have blended in perfectly with the surrounding scenery. As the beautiful notes were played, the flowers and plants in the surrounding garden seemed to be affected. They swayed their bodies slightly, as if they were dancing to the zither music. My little sister loves playing the zither. Whenever she has nothing to do, she loves to sit here and play the zither. But you have to say, her zither skills have become even more impressive than before. Even I can't help but become intoxicated by her music." Qin Xiao stared at the second miss of the Tianqin clan and sighed emotionally. "Yeah, your little sister's zither skills have indeed improved a lot. She can actually affect people's minds with just the sound of the zither." Jianxin also sighed emotionally because just then his mind had actually been affected by the zither music as well. He found it very unbelievable. Jianxin and Qin Xiao walked over and sat down on either side of the stone table. They quietly listened to the zither music played by the second miss of the Tianqin clan. They were not surprised at all. However, The second miss of the Tianqing clan did not seem to notice that two people had suddenly appeared beside her. She did not even move her eyes. She continued to concentrate on playing her zither. She was focused and serious. At that moment, it was as if there was nothing else in her eyes other than the zither music. After a long while, the beautiful music finally stopped. The second miss of the Tianqing clan stopped moving her slender fingers as well. Her gaze finally shifted away from the zither and landed on Jianchen and Qin Shao beside her. Her phoenix-like eyes flickered with a bright light. They were filled with intelligence, as if they could speak. "Brother, I'm really sorry. I made you wait. Master Jianchen, I never thought you'd come as well." The second miss of the Tianqing clan greeted the two of them with a smile. Her face was still covered by a veil, so her appearance was unclear. Jianchen nodded with a smile. Just when he wanted to say something, he heard Qin Zhao's voice. "Sister, it's fine if you wear a veil outside, but why do you always wear one at home? I've already gotten used to wearing a veil. If I take it off, I'll feel uncomfortable instead," said the second miss gently. She then looked at Jianchen and softly said, "I remember the last time I saw you, Master Jianchen. That was over a year ago. I wonder if you've been well since we last met." Jianchen smiled resplendently. "I've made the young miss worry. I'm fine. Instead, it's been a year since we last met, but your zither skills have improved at an extremely rapid rate. I've been immersed in the zither ever since I was young. I spent all my time studying it, but I've only made some progress. I'm nowhere near as good as the renowned heavenly enchantress," said the second miss. Jinchen's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He stared at the second miss of the Tianqing clan in surprise and asked, "Does the second miss want to walk the path of the heavenly enchantress and not cultivate saint force, only focusing on the zither? I think that's most likely the case. My sister has been extremely smart since she was young. Her talent for comprehension is extremely high, and her talent for cultivation is extremely good as well. However, what makes my father and the others helpless is that she just doesn't like cultivating saint force. Her saint force is still stuck at the 5th layer, even though she's already so old. All she does is play the zither when she has nothing to do, and she's been playing it for over a decade. Although her music is pretty good, it's completely useless against enemies," said Qin Shao helplessly. He felt his head hurt when he saw how infatuated his sister was with the way of the zither. In his opinion, it was a cultivation path with no future. The second miss of the Tianqing clan did not become angered at all when she heard Qin Zhao's reproachful words. She calmly explained, "Brother, you're underestimating the way of the zither far too much. I've only begun learning it. The profoundness and vastness of the way of the zither is far beyond what you can imagine. Once I truly begin cultivating the way of the zither, my battle prowess will be incomparable to the cultivators of the Tian Yuan continent. Aside from the heavenly enchantress, I've never heard of anyone else walking the way of the zither on the Tian Yuan continent. Sister, you don't have the method to cultivate the way of the zither, and you don't even have a person to teach you. It'll be extremely difficult for you to walk this path by yourself. So why don't you just focus on cultivating saint force?" Qin Shao sincerely advised. The second miss shook her head. "That's my goal. I'll spend all my effort to complete it. Even if I don't make any progress in the end, I won't regret it." Qin Shao, since the second miss is so infatuated with the way of the zither, let her walk this path. At the same time, although the music I heard from the second miss was nowhere close to the level of being able to control a person's soul, it has reached a certain level of maturity. As long as the second miss continues to study it, I believe she'll definitely achieve something with her talent," Jianchen said. Qin Shao secretly sighed when he heard Jinchen's words. He really did not approve of his sister taking such a difficult and arduous path. "Thank you for your encouragement, young Master Jianchen. My name is Qin. Young Master Jianchen, please call me by my name in the future. You don't have to call me the second miss all the time," the second miss smiled. The second miss of the Tianqing clan said with a smile. However, because her face was covered by a veil, her smile could not be seen. "Qin, Jianchen murmured softly. He smiled, "So the second miss name is Qin. It's a very nice name. I'll call you by that name in the future." Qin's eyes shone brightly. She stared at Jianshun for a while with her eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Afterward, she nodded slightly and said nothing. She continued to look at the zither on the stone table. Her slender fingers gently stroked the strings, producing melodious notes. Jianshun stared at the zither on the stone table. After a moment of thought, he said, "Miss Qin, I was fortunate enough to meet the heavenly enchantress once in Mercenary City. If I meet her again in the future, I'll definitely introduce you to her and see if she can give you some pointers." Qin's eyes lit up. She gratefully said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, young Master Jianshun. Becoming the heavenly enchantress disciple has always been my greatest wish." Jianshun did not waste too much time in the Tianqin clan. He chatted with Qin and Qin Xiao for a while. In the end, he agreed with Qin Xiao that he would come back to pick him up once he was done with his matters. He left Walnut City and headed for the Great Zhou Empire. The rest of the journey was extremely smooth. Jianshun was warmly received by the king when he arrived in the Great Zhou Empire. He then passed through a space gate in the Great Zhou Empire without any obstructions, crossing several 100,000 kilometers and appearing in a forest very close to Mercenary City. Chapter 599. Mercenary City was located at the very center of the Tian-Yuan continent. The entire city had been constructed at the very center of the continent. Although there were no walls, the amount of land the city occupied was no less than the 7 capital cities of the continent. It was the most famous city on the continent. In the eyes of the mercenaries, Mercenary City symbolized a divine power. It was a sacred place that could not be profaned, symbolizing freedom and peace. This was because Mercenary City did not have as many rules and regulations as other cities. Everyone was equal in Mercenary City, and there was no difference between the strong and the weak. Even a Heaven Saint Master and a commoner possessed the same status. There was no such thing as the strong preying on the weak. This was because fighting was forbidden in Mercenary City. Once inside, no matter how powerful you were, you would not be able to use it. Without a doubt, this prohibition made Mercenary City the safest place of refuge on the Tian-Yuan continent. This was because there was no need to worry about being hunted down by your enemies if you stayed there. Although there had been many people who had broken this rule in the past, it was impossible for anyone who broke the rule to survive, even if they were peak Heaven Saint Masters. At the same time, there had never been any rumors of a murder in Mercenary City. The only thing that could prove one's status in Mercenary City was money. As long as one had money, they could enjoy the superior treatment of a ruler. Without money, they could only sleep on the streets. Even eating would be a problem. Jianshun flew through the air with a white tiger in his arms. From afar, he could already see a large cluster of buildings standing in front of him. In the sky, he could vaguely see an extremely huge, transparent barrier that seemed to envelop the entire region, enveloping the entire Mercenary City. Jianshun became lost in thought as he stared at the huge barrier. He had come to Mercenary City once in the past, so he had a rough understanding of the place. He vaguely knew a few things. It seemed like the prohibition against fighting in Mercenary City was closely related to the huge barrier in the sky. Mercenary City did not have walls, so the roads leading into the city extended in all directions. Mercenaries and carriages carrying large amounts of goods constantly entered the city from all directions. Even though Mercenary City did not send any guards to maintain order, the mercenaries who entered the city all suppressed their wild nature and entered the city in an orderly manner. Everything seemed to be in order. Jianshun landed a few kilometers away from the barrier before making his way toward Mercenary City. He passed through the barrier without any obstructions and entered the city. As soon as he entered Mercenary City, Jianshun went to a place that sold magical beast mounts and bought a Class 3 magical beast mount for transportation. Mercenary City was just too large, and flying was forbidden in the city. As a result, he could only travel on a magical beast mount. Jianshun weaved through the bustling streets on his magical beast mount, buying all sorts of delicacies. He had prepared all of these for the villagers of Longevity Valley, Uncle Xiao, and the others, especially Little Fatty. He had never left Longevity Valley, so he did not know about the outside world. Of course, he had never tasted the delicacies of the outside world before. Jinshin strolled through the bustling streets for half a day. He used a large amount of purple coins stored in his space ring to buy things like crazy. Only after filling up 5 space belts did he finally stop. He then rode his magical beast mount to the largest medicinal store in Mercenary City. An hour later, Jinshin stopped outside a 5-story castle. This was one of the stores in Mercenary City that specialized in selling all sorts of heavenly resources and precious medicinal ingredients. Whoa! The white tiger in Jinshin's embrace had already smelled the fragrance of heavenly resources before he had even entered the store. It cried out urgently and excitedly in Jinshin's embrace. If it were not for Jinshin's tight embrace, it probably would have charged in by itself. Jinshin could not help but smile when he saw how impatient the white tiger was. As heavenly resources over 1,000 years old were just too rare in the kingdom of Jessen, it had been a very long time since the white tiger had tasted heavenly resources. It was starving. Jinshin strode in with the white tiger in his arms. There were many more people in the store than he had imagined. There were over 100 people dressed as mercenaries or merchants picking out things inside. A few attendants were extremely busy inside. However, he could tell from their conversations that they were all here to buy medicinal ingredients. A few mercenaries were here to sell heavenly resources that were several hundred years old. Jinshin looked around and discovered that the first floor of the store was mostly selling precious medicinal ingredients. As for heavenly resources, there was not even a single one for display. This was not the first time Jinshin had come to such a large store. He knew that the most important items were usually sold on the higher floors. Jinshin did not stop at the first floor and continued on to the second floor. When he arrived at the second floor, other than precious medicinal ingredients, there were already some heavenly resources for sale. However, almost all of them were under 500 years old. It was bustling with activity. Jinshin did not stop at all and continued on to the third floor. However, when he arrived at the staircase leading to the third floor, he was stopped by a guard. "I'm sorry, Your Excellency. The third floor is only open to VIPs with purple gold cards." The guard's tone was rather polite. Jinshin did not say anything. Several purple gold cards appeared in his hand at the same time. Seeing the purple gold cards, the guard did not stop him. He immediately put on a smiling face and invited Jinshin up. The fourth floor was very quiet. Only a few people were bargaining with the waiters. Here, Jinshin finally saw a few sealed heavenly resources placed on display. The price was marked, and the lowest price was over 10,000 purple gold. Some of the older rare species were even priced at over 100,000 purple gold. It could be said that they were very expensive. Looking at the heavenly resources that were over 1,000 years old, the white tiger's eyes immediately became straight. It kept licking its lips and had a covetous expression. "Young master, how may I be of service to you?" A female waitress around 20 years old came in front of Jinshin. Jinshin slowly made his way to a display and stared at a well-preserved heavenly resource. He said, "I want to discuss a big deal with you. Call over your manager, who can make the decision." The waitress glanced at Jinshin in surprise, but she did not dare to object. After calling out to Jinshin, she went to find the person in charge. Very soon, a middle-aged woman in luxurious robes with heavy makeup was invited out by the waitress who had left earlier. She directly arrived before Jinshin. The waitress smiled and explained to Jinshin, "Young master, this is our manager." The middle-aged woman studied Jinshin and smiled. "My name is Ochre. I'm a manager of this store. May I ask how I should address you, young master? You give me a familiar feeling, as if I've seen you somewhere before." Jinshin smiled and said, "Manager Ochre, let's get down to business. May I ask how many 1,000-year-old heavenly resources you have in your store?" Seeing that Jinshin didn't want to reveal his identity, Manager Ochre tactfully didn't continue to ask. She smiled and said, "We do have some heavenly resources in stock, but there aren't many 1,000-year-old ones. We only have 28 of them. Since young master is asking me this question, could it be that you want to buy all of these heavenly resources?" Manager Ochre, calculate the total price of these 28 heavenly resources Jianshun said calmly. Ochre was slightly surprised when she heard that. She asked uncertainly, "Young master, do you really want to buy all 27 heavenly resources? That's quite a large sum of money." Jianshun nodded slightly and did not say anything else. After receiving confirmation, Chi-Er's face also revealed a happy expression. Purchasing more than 20,000-year-old heaven and earth treasures in one go. Such a generous guest was very rare. Ochre immediately took out an abacus and began calculating. She quickly calculated the price and said, "Young master, these 26 heavenly resources are of different ages. Some are over 1,000 years old, some are 2,000 or 3,000 years old, and some are extremely rare. As a result, the price of each heavenly resource is different as well. The total price of these 26 heavenly resources is 1,030,000 purple coins. If you're sure you want to buy all of them in one go, then we'll round it down and only charge you 1,000,000 purple coins. Is that acceptable?" "All right, that's it. 26 heavenly resources are 1,000,000 purple coins in total." Jianshun straightforwardly took out a purple gold card and gave it to Ochre. He knew a little about the price of heavenly resources. Although the price varied from region to region, Ochre's price was still fair. Moreover, these 1,000-year-old heavenly resources were still priceless in some small regions. Ochre accepted the purple gold card excitedly. "If you need more 1,000-year-old heavenly resources in the future, please come find me. I'll give you a discount." Jianshun pondered slightly and said, "Manager Ochre, do you have any 10,000-year-old heavenly resources here?" "What? 10,000-year-old heavenly resources?" Ochre was surprised. She stared at Jianshun in surprise and said, "Young master, 10,000-year-old heavenly resources are not as easy to find as 1,000-year-old heavenly resources. 10,000-year-old heavenly resources are treasures that can only be found through luck. They are very difficult to find on the market, but the price of each one is extremely high. After all, they're treasures that can allow people to be reborn. They are also known as elixirs of immortality. Many experts at the end of their lifespans will use these treasures to extend their lives. Then may I ask if Manager Ochre knows where I can buy 10,000-year-old heavenly resources?" Jianshun asked. Chapter 600. Jianshun clasped his hands. "Thank you for the information, Manager Ochre. May I ask where the annual auction of Mercenary City is held? After all, there are quite a few auction houses in Mercenary City." Ochre giggled. "It looks like the young master is not familiar with Mercenary City. You don't even know something as basic as this. Since that's the case, allow me to tell the young master." Ochre paused slightly before continuing. "Young master, there are indeed quite a few auctions in Mercenary City. These auctions are all privately owned, but there's an even larger auction house in the center of Mercenary City. The young master just needs to ask around and you'll know its exact location. This auction house is different from other auction houses. It's held by the people of Mercenary City, and it's only held once a year. A few extremely rare items, such as 10,000-year-old heavenly resources, will appear in the auction every time. The 10,000-year-old heavenly resources that the young master needs will also appear in the auction once a year, and only one will appear each time. However, 10,000-year-old heavenly resources are just too rare, so there are many people fighting over them. If the young master is determined to obtain a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource, you have to prepare a large amount of purple coins." "Thank you for the information, Manager Ochre." Jianshun clasped his hands in gratitude. Ochre giggled and said, "Young noble is too polite. This is only a trivial matter. There's no need to be so grateful. As long as young noble can come and take care of our shop more in the future, this concubine will be very grateful." With that, Ochre returned the violet card to Jianshun. At the same time, she handed over an exquisite space belt and said, "Young master, this is your violet card. Please take care of it. The 26 heavenly resources you've purchased are all in this space belt. Please check it." Jianshun accepted the card and stored it in his space ring. He then checked the contents of his space belt and nodded in satisfaction. After bidding farewell to Ochre, he left. Ochre slowly made her way to the window. She stared at Jianshun's figure that gradually disappeared down the street, and frowned slightly. She murmured softly, "Just who is that person? Strange. Why does he seem so familiar to me? As if I've seen him somewhere before. But I haven't left Mercenary City in all these years, so I don't think I've come into contact with anyone other than a few familiar people, especially such a young man." Jianchen was riding a Class 3 magical beast as he walked through the bustling streets. In his arms, the snow-white white tiger was using its front paws to hold a carrot-sized treasure and wolfing it down. Its small, sparkling eyes were filled with the radiance of happiness. To it, the time it spent happily eating the heavenly treasure was the most wonderful and blissful moment in the world. Jianchen gently watched the white tiger's cute scene. He could not help but smile faintly. After spending some time together, the white tiger held an extremely important place in his heart. Seeing the white tiger happy made him very happy as well. Jianchen arrived at the center of Mercenary City on his mount. After asking a few passers-by, he finally found the auction site set up by Mercenary City. The auction site set up by Mercenary City was extremely large. It was a huge building that stood over 30 meters tall. It was grand and magnificent, taking up an extremely large area in the center of the city where every inch of land was worth its weight in gold. From afar, it seemed like a primordial beast crouching on the ground. "Ah, stardust! That's stardust! Master, I found stardust!" Suddenly, Ziying's excited voice rang out in Jinchen's head. "Master, go and get the stardust. It's an extremely rare material for forging artifacts. It's extremely valuable," Qing Suo excitedly said. Jianchen was pleasantly surprised when he heard the excited cries of the sword spirits. He knew that this was another high-level material for forging the twin swords. If he could obtain this material, he would be one step closer to forging the twin swords. "Ziying, Qing Suo, where is the stardust?" Jianchen asked. He did not recognize the stardust. If it were not for the sword spirits, he probably would not have been able to recognize it, even if it was placed right before him. As soon as Jianchen finished speaking, a profound feeling appeared in his head. At that moment, a strand of his mind seemed to be attracted by a strange force, connecting with a mysterious object. He could accurately sense its location. Jianchen subconsciously looked at the huge auction site set up by Mercenary City. He could clearly sense the location of the stardust through the connection in his head. It was actually within the auction site. "Master, you must obtain the stardust. Once the stardust is added to the newly forged twin swords, the quality of the twin swords will increase. Even though it's nowhere near the quality of a god artifact, it'll still be a supreme quality treasure at the very least." Qing Suo's excited voice rang out in Jinchen's head. "The stardust is an immortal tier material for forging artifacts. I never thought that it would appear here. Master, you must obtain it no matter what price you have to pay." Ziying's voice was rather urgent. She placed great importance on the stardust. Jianchen also became stern when he saw how Ziying and Qing Suo placed such importance on the stardust. He stared at the auction site with burning desire for a while before leaving on his Class 3 magical beast. The stardust was in the auction site. The auction had not officially started yet, so it was impossible to enter the auction site. Everything could only wait until the auction officially started in 2 days. Perhaps the stardust would directly appear in the auction. Afterwards, Jianchen strolled through the streets. He went to many large stores that sold precious medicinal ingredients and bought over 50,000-year-old heavenly resources, spending over 2 million purple coins. Jianchen did not feel the slightest bit of heartache. The white tiger's growth was just too slow. It took much more time than normal magical beasts. The only way for it to grow quickly was to eat large amounts of heavenly resources. In his opinion, as long as the white tiger could quickly grow stronger, it did not matter how much money he had to spend. At the same time, Jianchen did not lack money. He had obtained a large amount of purple coins and other valuable items from the space rings of the Heaven Saint Masters he had killed. He had also plundered the treasuries of the Pingyang Kingdom and the Heavenly Eagle Kingdom, obtaining a large amount of purple coins and monster cores. As a result, Jianchen had basically become a moving treasury. Jianshin strolled through the bustling streets until evening before finally stopping to rest. He then found an inn to stay in and awaited the auction in 2 days. Not only were there 10,000-year-old heavenly resources at the auction this time, it was also very likely that he would come across stardust, an important material for forging the azulite swords. As a result, Jianshin could not miss this annual auction. He had no choice but to delay his journey to Longevity Valley until 2 days later. At night, Jianshin cultivated on his bed in a luxurious room. He hoped to reach the limit of his comprehension of the energy of the world as soon as possible so that he could comprehend the mysteries of the world through a small stone tablet with a Saint Tier battle skill inscribed on it and break through to Saint Ruler. Beside him, the little white tiger that had gobbled up the 3 heavenly treasures was lying there in a deep sleep to digest the medicinal effects. The candles in the room had been extinguished long ago, so it was completely dark. It was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. In the sky above Mercenary City, the huge barrier that enveloped the entire city suddenly rippled slightly. Afterwards, a girl's voice rang out in the surroundings. It was extremely soft. It's Master's scent. It's Master's scent. That's strange. Hasn't Master already left this world? Why do I smell Master's scent? Has Master returned? The clear voice rang out in the pitch-black sky of Mercenary City. Strangely, the voice did not travel very far in the silent night. It's Master's scent. It's so faint, so faint. Has Master really returned? The clear voice rang through the surroundings again and again, filled with undisguised excitement. It quickly drifted toward the city, but what was strange was that only the voice could be heard and the person was nowhere to be seen. I found it, I found it. It's here, it's here. Master's scent comes from here. It's so faint, so faint. Hee. Master must have returned. Master must be testing me. Hee. Xiaoling's nose is really sharp. No matter how faint Master's scent is, I can find it immediately. When the clear voice rang out again, it was already outside a luxurious inn on the street. Before it had even finished speaking, it had already entered the inn. Within the room, Jianshin's ears twitched gently as he sat on the bed. His closed eyes suddenly snapped open, and in that moment, 2 streaks of light seemed to shoot out from his eyes. They disappeared in a flash, like a lamp in the pitch-black room. Jianshin glanced around the room with a sharp gaze. The darkness in the room did not affect him at all, allowing him to see clearly even in the darkness. Who's speaking? Jianshin called out softly as he became stern. He had heard someone speak extremely clearly earlier, but he could not sense anyone in the surroundings. He immediately became extremely cautious. Even though he was in Mercenary City, he did not lower his guard at all. Chapter 601. Jianshin suddenly flipped through the air and landed firmly on the ground. He cautiously looked around and expanded the senses of his soul, enveloping the entire inn in an attempt to find the person who had spoken. However, to his disappointment, he failed to discover anything. The voice that had just appeared beside his ear and was extremely clear did not seem to come from a human. The voice was different from the communication techniques of Saint Rulers, because the communication techniques of Saint Rulers directly rang out in his ears. It was impossible to find the source of the voice, unlike before where he could accurately pinpoint the source of the voice. Moreover, it was right beside him. This strange sight made his hairs stand on end, as if an invisible ghost was speaking beside him. Who's speaking? Jianshin became extremely stern. This was the first time he had seen something so strange. Perhaps in response to Jianshin's question, the dark room suddenly lit up. Strands of light gathered in the room, gradually condensing into the figure of a person. It was a little girl wearing a long pink dress. She looked to be around 12 or 13 years old. She was very cute, but the only flaw was that the little girl's figure was illusory. She was not solid. Her body seemed to be formed entirely by light. With her appearance, the darkness in the room was completely dispelled, becoming brighter. Jianshin's eyes narrowed to the size of needles. He stared at the girl closely as if he had seen a ghost. Who are you? Jianshin called out in a deep voice. He had already become extremely cautious against the girl who did not seem to be a threat at all. She was just too strange. The girl looked at Jianshun curiously before circling around him a few times. She constantly glanced at Jianshun and mumbled to herself in confusion. So faint, so faint. Master scent is so faint, but you're clearly not my master. Oi, who are you? Jianshun was completely confused by the girl's words, but Jianshun did not lower his guard at all. He replied, I am Jianshun. May I ask who you are? Why have you come to my room? Jianshun? The girl frowned slightly as she pondered. She asked subconsciously, who is Jianshun? Jianshun is me. Jianshun's facial muscles twitched gently. The girl's gaze once again fell on Jianshun. You're Jianshun? No, you're not my master. My master's name is not Jianshun, and he's not as weak as you. But strange, why do I smell my master's scent? Could it be that I'm mistaken? Impossible, impossible. I definitely can't be mistaken about my master's scent. Although it's very faint, I can still distinguish it. The girl rolled her eyes a few times before suddenly giggling at Jianshun. Big brother, can you tell Xiao Ling if you've seen my master somewhere? Where's my master now? Why hasn't he come back to see Xiao Ling for so long? Does he not want Xiao Ling anymore and forgot about Xiao Ling? Towards the end, the girl's eyes turned slightly red, as if she was about to cry. She was very aggrieved and sad. Seeing the girl's pitiful appearance, Jianshun's heartstrings were deeply touched. It was as if he saw a child who had lost her parents, painstakingly searching for her lost parents. She was so helpless, so lonely. Little girl, can you tell me who you are? And who is your master? Perhaps I've seen him somewhere before. Jianshun probed. In his mind, he quickly thought of all the important figures he knew. I'm Xiao Ling, but others call me the Boundary Spirit. As for my master, you should know. He's the city lord of this city. The girl replied. The city lord of this city. Jianshun stared blankly for a moment before muttering to himself. He seemed to be thinking about who the city lord of this city was, but soon after, Jianshun's expression changed greatly as he cried out in surprise. What did you say? Your master is the city lord of Mercenary City? Hee, that's right. My master is the city lord of Mercenary City. Big brother, you really do know my master. Can you tell me where my master is right now? Big brother, I beg you, the girl excitedly said. Towards the end, her words gradually turned into pleading. She looked at Jianshun pitifully. Jianshun gasped as he stared at the girl who did not seem to be older than 12 or 13. Disbelief flooded his face. There had only been one city lord of Mercenary City since ancient times, and that was the greatest expert of the Tian Yuan continent, Mo Tianyan. The master of the girl was actually the greatest expert of the Tian Yuan continent in the past, Mo Tianyan. It was impossible for Jianshun not to be shocked by this. After quite a while, Jianshun finally calmed down. He stared at the girl in fright and questioned, Little girl, is what you just said true? The city lord of Mercenary City, Mo Tianyun, is your master? Even now, Jianshun was willing to believe that he had misheard. Yeah, he's Xiao Ling's master. Xiao Ling will never forget him. Back then, master was the one who gave me the name Xiao Ling. It's just that master left for a very long time and never came to visit Xiao Ling. Xiao Ling really misses master, the girl said with a sad expression. The little girl said with a lonely expression. At this moment, her petite figure looked so lonely. Jianshun's shock could no longer be described with words. He stared at the girl in front of him in shock, unable to return to his senses even after quite some time. Was this strange girl really from the same generation as Mo Tianyan? Jianshun suddenly realized an extremely terrifying problem when he thought up to there. His heart could not help but tremble. If the girl really was from the same generation as Mo Tianyan, just how long had she lived? Big brother, I beg you to tell little Ling where master is, okay? Why hasn't he come to visit Xiao Ling in so long? Xiao Ling really misses master. The girl stared at Jianshun with teary eyes. She seemed so pitiful that anyone who saw her would feel pity for her. Looking at the girl's pitiful appearance, Jianshun also felt a trace of pity for her. However, the girl's words were so shocking that even Jianshun did not know how to reply. Mo Tianyun was a figure from the ancient era. Even though he was the most powerful person in the continent, he could not withstand the erosion of time and had already passed away many years ago. All that was left was his illustrious reputation. How could Jianshin have seen Imo Tianyan before? Big brother, I beg you, can you please tell Xiaoling where master is gone? Seeing that Jianshin did not respond, the girl asked again, her voice filled with pleading. Jianshin secretly sighed inside. He looked at the girl in a rather shaken state. After a moment of thought, he said, "Little sister, I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I've never seen your master before." "That's impossible. Big brother, your line to Xiaoling, Xiaoling's nose is very sensitive. You can't lie to Xiaoling. Big brother, you have master scent on you. You must have seen master before." The girl pouted. Her face was filled with disbelief. Jianshin shook his head with a bitter smile. "Little girl, you must be mistaken. I really haven't seen your master. Although your master is the greatest expert on the continent, so much time has passed. Your master has already passed away when the end of his life is near." "Big brother, you're lying. Master is so powerful that he has already surpassed the limits of his lifespan. He lives as long as the world. So how could he have passed away?" "Big brother, you can't lie to Xiaoling," Xiaoling grumbled somewhat angrily. She was extremely dissatisfied with Jianshin, saying that her master had passed away. Jianshin rubbed his temples with a headache. He really had no idea how to deal with this girl with a rather frightening background. "Big brother, I beg you, can you just tell Xiaoling where master is? Xiaoling will definitely repay you," the little girl repeated over and over again. "Little sister, it's not that I don't want to tell you, but I really haven't seen your master," Jianshin said helplessly. The little girl was a little anxious. With a sullen face, she sobbed, But you clearly have master's scent on you. Although it's very faint, you can't hide it from little Ling. Big brother, you must have seen master before." "Have I?" Jianshin carefully checked his body. He also found it very strange. Why did the girl always say that she had Imo Tianyan's scent on him? However, he was certain that he had never seen Imo Tianyan before. Suddenly, a thought flashed through Jianshin's head. He said, "Little sister, perhaps I have something your master once left behind on me, which is why you can sense your master's scent. Is that really the case? Big brother, you really haven't seen my master?" The girl's face was filled with indescribable sorrow and desolation. "I swear that I, Jianshin, have never seen your master." Even though Jianshin could not bear to make such a cute girl sad, he could only do this in order to completely dispel the misunderstanding in her heart. The girl was stunned. She stood there and stared blankly at the serious Jianshin, as if she did not dare to accept this reality. After remaining in this position for a few breaths, she suddenly burst into tears. She sobbed, "Master, just where are you? Do you really not want Xiaoling anymore? Xiaoling really, really misses you. Master, just where are you?" The girl cried very sadly. As she cried, her body constantly faded, gradually disappearing from Jinshin's eyes. The room sank into darkness once more. "Whoa, Master, just where are you? Come back quickly and see Xiaoling. Xiaoling really, really misses you." The girl's desolate and sorrowful cries constantly rang out in the pitch-black night. Her voice constantly drifted into the distance, echoing throughout the entire sky before finally fading away. Jianshin seemed to be affected by the girl's sorrowful cries. His heart became heavy, and he began to feel pity for the girl who had just appeared from the depths of his heart. Jianshin lit the candle again before opening the window to look at the scenery outside. It was already 3 in the morning, and Mercenary City was silent. No one seemed to have heard the girl's cries earlier. Jianshin closed the window and sat down beside the bed. He pulled out 3 palm-sized, snow-white beast furs from his space ring and carefully studied them in his hand. This was because the 3 beast furs of unknown origins were the most mysterious items on him. In the past, it was one of the 3 beast furs that had caused the destruction of the Bai family with a saint ruler. Chapter 602. Although Jianshin guessed that the 3 beast skins might have been left behind by Mo Tianyun, he had no idea what kind of secrets were hidden within them. If they were a treasure map, there were no patterns or lines on them. They seemed like extremely ordinary bee skins. The only difference was that the 3 bee skins were extremely flexible and indestructible. Jinshin flipped the 3 hides around and studied them for quite a while. In the end, he stowed them away in his space ring, unable to find anything. This was something that had caused the destruction of the powerful Bai family, so Jinshin did not dare to expose it. Afterwards, Jinshin stayed in the inn for 2 days without setting a foot outside. He only left the inn when the annual auction of Mercenary City began 2 days later. During these 2 days, the girl called Xiao Ling did not appear again. Early in the morning, Jinshin carried the sleeping white tiger to the auction of Mercenary City. He spent 10 purple coins to purchase a ticket and slowly entered the auction through the bustling crowd. The auction was extremely large. It was divided into 7 floors, and every floor was packed with seats. There were at least 10,000 of them at a glance. If the 7 floors were connected, they would be able to hold at least 100,000 people. In this auction held by Mercenary City, there were no VIP rooms set up. There were only the same ordinary seats. Regardless of whether one was the head of the family with a great reputation or an unknown traveling merchant, their status was completely equal. There was no advantage to be had. Jinshin carried the sleeping white tiger to an inconspicuous corner and sat down. He waited excitedly for the auction to begin. 2 hours later, the auction was filled with people. Even though there were almost 100,000 people, the place was extraordinarily quiet. Everyone sat there and waited quietly. No one made a ruckus. There were even very few people who whispered to each other. Even if there was something, they communicated with their gazes. Suddenly, the originally bright light dimmed, and the entire auction house fell into darkness. After the darkness lasted for a moment, several strong beams of light suddenly appeared, radiating intense light onto the high platform at the front, illuminating the entire platform. On the stage, a beautiful woman had appeared out of nowhere. From her appearance, she looked to be in her 30s. She wore a green gauze dress that completely revealed her devilish figure. At this moment, she was standing in front of a long table with a small wooden mallet in her hand. Jinshin did not even need to think to know that she was the host of the auction when he saw the beautiful woman. However, what surprised him was that she was actually a Heaven Saint Master. If Heaven Saint Masters were placed in the kingdom of Jessen, they would definitely be people of great statuses. Yet now, an expert like that had personally come to host the auction. Only Mercenary City would be able to do something so extravagant. After the host of the auction said some pleasantries, the auction began. Precious and rare treasures were presented from the back for everyone to bid on. The auction venue, which had been quiet for a long time, finally ushered in a moment of uproar. The sound of bidding continued to ring out from all directions. One mid-earth tier battle skill suitable for fire-attributed Saint Force. The starting price is 500,000 purple gold. 1 Class 7 Radiant Spirit Pill. If a heavily injured person consumes this pill, they'll be able to recover in less than 10 minutes. The starting price is 700,000 purple gold. 1 Class 6 Monster Core. This is a high-class monster core that's extremely difficult to obtain on the Tian-Yuan continent. You can't miss this opportunity. The starting price is 400,000 purple gold. One after another, extremely precious and rare items were brought up. Every item that was brought up would cause many people to fiercely bid for it. As a result, the final price of each item was at least 3 times the starting price. Very quickly, for hours passed. At this time, the auctioneer held an exquisite classical treasure box in his hand. As the box was slowly opened, a rich fragrance drifted out and spread to every corner of the auction venue, causing the spirits of everyone who smelled this fragrance to be uplifted. Jinshin, who sat in the corner, also became alert. He stared at the box in the host's hand with shining eyes. He knew that this was one of the items he needed. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure everyone is familiar with this item. The item in the box in my hand is an extremely rare heavenly resource. It's called the Earth Core Fruit. It grows in spiritual soil where the energy of the world gathers, and it has existed for over 10,000 years. It's an extremely rare heavenly resource that's over 10,000 years old. Not only does it have the effect of rejuvenating a person, it can also extend their lifespan. If an Earth Saint Master or Heaven Saint Master who is nearing the end of their lifespan were to consume this fruit, they would be able to extend their lifespan by 200 years, helping them break through to a higher level of cultivation. The appearance of the Earth Core fruit immediately caused many old people who were nearing the end of their lifespans to burn with desire. All those who could become Heaven Saint Masters had accumulated quite a lot of wealth, or they had the support of a powerful organization. When they were about to reach the end of their lifespans, worldly possessions like wealth were not that important in their eyes. Their own lives were the most important. The host smiled as she glanced at the people in front of her. She continued, "All right, I won't waste everyone's precious time. I'm sure everyone understands the value of this Earth Core fruit. If you need it, you can't miss it. I now announce that the auction for the Earth Core fruit will begin. The base price is 500,000 purple gold, and each bid must not be lower than 10,000 purple gold. 550,000 purple gold." As soon as the host finished speaking, someone impatiently called out a bid, directly increasing the price by 50,000 purple gold. 600,000 purple gold. Another person beside Jianshan called out a bid. It was a burly, middle-aged man. He wore a set of tight purple robes. Although his appearance was ordinary, his eyes shone brightly. His eyebrows were raised high, making him seem like a divine sword that radiated with a sharp sword intent. A Heaven Saint Master. Jianshan was secretly surprised when he sensed the middle-aged man's strength. Mercenary City really was a place where experts gathered. Heaven Saint Masters that were rarely seen outside did not seem to be that rare here. 700,000 purple gold. 800,000 purple gold. The bidding for the Earth Core fruit was still going on fiercely. In a short period of time, the price had risen to a sky-high price of 1 million purple gold coins. This price was enough to buy dozens of thousands of years old heavenly treasures. 1,300,000 purple gold. An old voice rang out from above. An old man sitting on the floor above had called out a bid. Now that the price had reached such a level, the number of people bidding gradually decreased. 1,350,000 purple gold. The middle-aged man beside Jianshan gritted his teeth as if he had almost reached his limit. 1,400,000 purple gold. Another old man immediately called out an even higher price. The middle-aged man sighed in disappointment and murmured, "Whatever, I'll just fight for it in the next auction." An indescribable sense of regret appeared on the middle-aged man's face. Jianshan clearly heard the middle-aged man's murmur. He casually glanced at the middle-aged man before moving his gaze away and continuing to watch the bidding. 1,700,000 purple gold. 1,800,000 purple gold. The bidding for the Earth Core fruit continued extremely intensely. Very soon, the price had approached 2 million purple gold. Although the difference in age between a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource and a 1,000-year-old heavenly resource only differed by a few years, the only advantage of a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource was that it could prolong a person's life. Because of this, the price of a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource was many times that of a 1,000-year-old heavenly resource. At the same time, 10,000-year-old heavenly resources were extremely rare treasures. This was because there were just too few heavenly resources that could truly withstand 10,000-year-old heavenly resources. Many of them were only a few hundred years old or 1,000 years old before they were taken away by magical beasts or humans. As a result, cultivating a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource was an extremely difficult matter. 2,800,000 purple gold. Jianshan finally no longer remained silent. He called out a shocking price, directly raising the price by 1 million purple gold, because he understood that there were still many people who had the intention to compete for this heavenly resource. If he wanted them to retreat, he had to show a strong side. This time, the auction venue was quiet for a moment. 2,800,000 purple gold. This undoubtedly eliminated a portion of the people who wanted a bid. The middle-aged man sitting beside Jianshan stared at Jianshan in astonishment. He chuckled and said, "This little brother is really bold. You are actually willing to spend so much money to buy the Earth Core fruit. Presumably, This little brother must be taking it back to show respect to your elders." Hearing this, Jianshan smiled and shook his head. The middle-aged man laughed heartily and said, "Looks like I guessed wrong. Could it be that this little brother is keeping it for his own use? A 10,000-year-old heavenly resource can increase a person's strength by quite a bit, especially when breaking through from Great Saint Master to Earth Saint Master. If you have the assistance of a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource, then the success rate will be 100%. There is simply no need to worry about failing to break through and becoming a cripple or directly dying." Hearing this, Jinshin's eyes suddenly lit up. He stared closely at the middle-aged man and cupped his hands. "Brother, you just said that if a great Saint Master consumes a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource, then they will be able to smoothly break through to Earth Saint Master and won't fail. Of course, this is no secret on the Tian-Yuan continent. If this little brother doesn't believe me, you can ask any of the older generation people. It's just that the price of a 10,000-year-old heavenly resource is extremely high. In the entire Tian-Yuan continent, there aren't many large clans that are willing to waste such a precious treasure on a great Saint Master." The middle-aged man said, 3 million purple gold. At this moment, another bid rang out. Chapter 603. When the price reached a high price of 3,500,000 purple gold coins, another portion of the crowd gave up on bidding. At this time, the rest of the people who were interested in this heaven and earth treasure also hesitated, weighing in their hearts whether or not they should continue to bid. Although heaven and earth treasures that were 10,000 years old were very rare in the outside world, one would appear in Mercenary City every year and would not go extinct. If they did not have the opportunity this time, they could wait until the next time. 3,600,000 purple gold coins. The auction house was silent for a moment before another bid was made. For million purple gold coins. Jianshan immediately bid an even higher price. At this moment, although he looked calm, his heart was in pain. 4 million purple gold coins was enough for him to buy over 100 heaven and earth treasures. It seems that little brother is determined to obtain the earth's core fruit. This one is Hu Xiaotian. How should I address you, little brother? The middle-aged man sitting beside Jianshan said to Jianshan with a smile. Jianshan turned his head to size up this middle-aged man named Hu Xiaotian. Seeing this middle-aged man's righteous and magnanimous face, he should not be a scheming person, so he smiled and said, "This one is Jianshan." "Jianshan, could it be that you are that Jianshan who obtained first place in the last mercenary tournament and won the title of Mercenary King?" Hu Xiaotian stared at Jianshan with a face full of surprise. "That's me," Jianshan said. Hu Xiaotian was clearly startled, but he immediately recovered. He cupped his hands and said with a smile, "So, it is Mercenary King Jianshan. Nice to meet you. Unfortunately, this one was busy during the last mercenary tournament, so I did not go to watch the battle. Otherwise, I would definitely have been able to see young hero Jianshan display his skills in the arena." Next, Jianshan and Hu Xiaotian casually chatted as they participated in the bidding war. In the end, they purchased the 10,000-year-old heavenly material for a high price of 4.8 million. At the same time, Jianshan, who was sitting in the corner, also attracted the attention of many people. Many people cast curious glances at him, guessing in their hearts which family the young master of Jianshan, who looked no more than 20 years old, was from. On the third floor of the auction house, an old man in a white robe frowned slightly as he pondered. Strange, why does the voice of the person who bid for the earth core fruit sound so familiar? The old man murmured in a low voice. Suddenly, 2 beams of light burst out from his originally ordinary eyes. He exclaimed in a low voice, "Jianshan, this is Jianshan's voice. How is this possible? Could it be that he is still alive?" When the old man guessed Jianshan's identity, he was suddenly shocked. He immediately stood up from his chair and hurried downstairs. Soon, he arrived at the first floor of the auction house. His sharp eyes scanned the somewhat dark space, and soon, he found Jianshan's trace in a corner. The moment he saw Jianshan, the old man's body trembled slightly. His face revealed a look of ecstasy as he murmured, "It's him! It's him! It's really him! I didn't expect him to be alive. The Treasure Mountain seal must be on him. Under the sharp gaze of the old man, Jianshun also turned his head and looked over. We saw the old man. He was slightly stunned. Soon after, a meaningful smile appeared on his face. He stood up and left his seat. With his head held high and his chest puffed out, he walked over to the old man with large strides. Jianshun swaggered in front of the old man and studied him with a smile. He smiled and said, "If I remember correctly, you should be the third elder of the Sure family. I didn't think I'd meet you here. What a coincidence." The old man was the third elder of the Sure family, who possessed wind attributed Saint Force. Back then, he had chased Jianshun to a dead end. Jianshun had an extremely deep impression of him. "You really are Jianshun." With Jianshun's words, the third elder of the Sure family was completely certain of his guess. The young man before him really was Jianshun, who had taken their Sure family's treasure mountain seal back then. However, after learning of Jianshun's identity, the third elder of the Sure family became excited. During this time, they had never stopped searching for the whereabouts of the ruler armament. They had even expended a lot of energy to use secret techniques to search for the ruler armament, but in the end, they still came up empty-handed. Instead, they had expended quite a lot of their energy. Yet now, he had unexpectedly encountered the culprit who had stolen their ruler armament back then at the auction in Mercenary City. This allowed the third elder of the Sure family to see hope of finding the ruler armament again, which filled him with an indescribable excitement. "Jianshun, you sure are lucky. You actually survived such heavy injuries back then," the third elder of the Sure family sneered. Jianshun chuckled. "It's probably because the Yama king of the underworld refused to take me in, which is why I survived back then. We were too careless back then and did not take your corpse with us. Otherwise, how could you live such a happy life? Jianshun, I don't want to waste time with you. Now that the Jitta family is not here, you should hurry up and return our Sure family's treasure mountain seal. I will also keep the news that you are still alive a secret." The third elder of the Sure family said in a low voice. Jianshun looked at the third elder of the Sure family mockingly and said, "Third elder, please go back. I still have to continue bidding, so I won't keep you company." With that, Jianshun turned and left, returning to his seat. The third elder of the Sure family coldly stared at Jianshun's departing figure as he clenched his fists tightly. If it weren't for the fact that they were in Mercenary City, he would have attacked Jianshun long ago. How could he have allowed him to leave so calmly? "Jianshun, let's see where you can run to this time." The third elder of the Sure family sneered and turned to leave the auction house, no longer participating in the bidding. "Little brother Jianshun, the way that old man looked at you was a bit strange. Could it be that you have some grudge with him?" Jianshun had just sat down when Hu Xiaoyan's voice came from beside him. Jianshun did not try to hide it and said, "Yes, it's a big enemy. Little brother Jianshun, you should be careful. That old man is a heaven saint master. His strength is on a completely different level from that of an earth saint master." Hu Xiaoyan said with a serious face. "Thank you for your concern. I will be careful," Jianshun replied with a smile. Since he had hidden his presence, Hu Xiaoyan was unable to see through his strength. "But there's no need to worry too much, little brother Jianshun. If you come across an enemy you can't handle, just hide in Mercenary City, because no one will dare to start a fight in Mercenary City. This rule doesn't just apply to Heaven Saint Masters and everyone below them. Even Saint Rulers, who are rarely seen, won't dare to cause trouble in Mercenary City," Hu Xiaoyan said. Jianshun's heart skipped a beat when he heard that. He said in surprise, "Even Saint Rulers don't dare to cause trouble here. Is Mercenary City really that terrifying?" "It's even more terrifying than you can imagine." Hu Xiaoyan's expression immediately became solemn. He pointed at the sky and said, "Little brother, you must have seen the huge barrier that envelopes the entire Mercenary City. Let me tell you, this barrier has existed for countless years. It was personally set up by Mo Tianyun in the past, and it has always silently protected Mercenary City. If you fight or injure someone in Mercenary City, you'll be punished by the power of the barrier. In severe cases, you'll even die on the spot. It is extremely terrifying." So that's how it is. Jianshun came to a realization. The auction continued, and within an hour, more than a dozen precious items were sold. At this moment, the auctioneer raised a glass bottle high into the air. The glass bottle was very small, only the size of a fist. It shone with a hazy light, like the destruction of a starry sky. It was extremely enchanting. At a closer glance, it was not difficult to see that there were quite a few grains the size of sand floating in the bottle. They moved slowly, and every single one of them shone with a starry light. From afar, it seemed like a boundless starry sky. Every single grain was a star in the vast universe. The auctioneer raised the hazy item and loudly said, "Everyone, I will introduce this treasure to everyone. I'm sure this is the first time many of you are seeing this item in my hand, because it comes from a place of despair on the Tian-Yuan continent, the Sea of Illusory Stars." What? The Sea of Illusory Stars? It said that the Sea of Illusory Stars is the most dangerous place on the Tian-Yuan continent aside from the Death Nest. It's even more terrifying than the Cross Mountain Range. It's impossible for Heaven's Saint Masters to survive there, and even Saint Rulers can die there. I never thought that this item would come from the Sea of Illusory Stars. It must have been brought out by some hermit Saint Ruler. I just don't know what use this item has, but since it comes from the Sea of Illusory Stars, it must have something special about it. A single stone caused 1,000 ripples. As soon as they heard that it came from the Sea of Illusory Stars, the people sitting in the auction hall immediately cried out in surprise. Everyone looked at the glass bottle in the auctioneer's hand with great interest. Jianshin stared at the glass bottle. He knew that this was the celestial powder that the sword spirits had mentioned. It was an extremely high-grade material. This is celestial powder, but it's a little too little. I'm afraid it won't even be enough. If you want to forge the azulate swords, you'll need at least several dozen kilograms. Ziying's disappointed voice rang out in Jinshin's head. However, what he said shocked Jinshin quite a bit. He cried out, "What? You need several dozen kilograms of celestial powder to forge the azulate swords?" "Yeah. In short, the more celestial powder you add, the better. You'll need to add as much as you can. However, although there's very little celestial powder for sale here, it's fortunate that the Sea of Illusory Stars produces celestial powder. Master, you have to go there and collect as much celestial powder as you can," Ying said. Jianshan bitterly smiled and sighed when he heard that. Although he did not know how powerful the Sea of Illusory Stars was, he had already gotten a rough idea of how terrifying it was from what others had said. Chapter 604. The auctioneer's voice once again rang out from the stage. "The item in my hand that comes from the Sea of Illusory Stars has a very unique name. It is called Spiritual Gathering Powder. It is not only beautiful on the surface, its effects will definitely shock everyone present, because it has the ability to gather Yuan Qi from the world. If you wear it on your body, then your cultivation speed will greatly increase. Even when compared to absorbing the energy from monster cores to cultivate, it will not be inferior." Hearing this, the large auction hall burst into an uproar. Just this point alone made everyone understand the value of the spiritual gathering powder. However, the auctioneer's next sentence made many people go crazy. The effects of the spiritual gathering powder are not that simple. As long as it comes into contact with the outside world, then it will be able to continuously absorb the Yuan Qi of the world. If you place it in your clan, then the Yuan Qi of the world in your clan will be many times denser than usual. It can easily transform your clan into a sacred cultivation ground. Everyone, think about it. Once you have such excellent conditions, why worry about your clan not being strong? Hearing this, everyone's gazes burned with passion. Everyone's eyes burned with desire. To them, the effects of the spirit-gathering powder were countless times more precious than the 10,000-year-old heavenly treasure, the Earthheart fruit. After all, this was a sacred item that could make a clan powerful and prosperous. Furthermore, it was produced in the Sea of Illusory Stars and was extremely difficult to obtain. This prevented the possibility of the spirit-gathering powder appearing in large quantities on the Tianyuan continent. At this moment, everyone had already made up their minds to do their best to obtain the spiritual gathering powder, because it was just too important to a clan. The auction for the spiritual gathering powder will now begin. The starting price is 3 million purple coins, and each increment must not be lower than 100,000. If there is anyone who is interested in the spiritual gathering powder, then do not miss it. This spiritual gathering powder is extremely difficult to obtain. The auctioneer said with a smile. Following this, a fierce battle ensued. The people from various clans all hysterically bid for the spiritual gathering powder, causing the price of the spiritual gathering powder to skyrocket at an unbelievable speed. In just a short moment, it broke through the high price of 10 million purple coins. Jianshan calmly sat in the corner without saying a word. He listened to the constant bids in the surroundings. After learning that this little bit of powder was nowhere near enough to forge the azulite swords, he had already given up on the idea of bidding. This was because this little bit of powder would not be of any help to the forging of the twin swords. It looks like I'll have to pay a visit to the Sea of Illusory Stars once I'm strong enough. Only there can I obtain enough heavenly star powder for the azulite swords, Jianshan thought. The heavenly star powder was auctioned off for an hour, and in the end, it was bought by a mysterious old man sitting on the second floor. The final price was over 80 million purple gold coins, enough to match the entire wealth of a kingdom. The auction lasted for an entire day before coming to an end. When Jianshan left the auction hall, the sky outside had already become pitch black. Hu Xiaotian arrived beside Jianshan and raised his head to look at the pitch-black sky. He murmured, unknowingly, I've already spent an entire day in there. Brother Jianshan, may I ask which inn you're staying in? I'm staying in an inn called Ku Xiang Yuan on the Western Street. Sir Hu Xiaotian, it's getting late, so I need to go back and rest. Farewell. Jianshan clasped his hands at Hu Xiaotian before turning around and leaving with large strides. Hold on, I just happen to not have found an inn yet. Why don't I stay in Ku Xiang Yuan with Brother Jianshan? Hu Xiaotian chuckled as he chased after Jianshan and walked beside him. All right, Brother Jianshan, you should have been to the sacred land of Mercenary City, right? That's a place that even saint rulers yearn for. May I ask if Brother Jianshan can tell me what's so special about the sacred land? Hu Xiaotian casually asked. There's indeed something special about it, but the saint-tier battle skills that truly attract saint rulers are the saint-tier battle skills. Jianshan did not hide anything from Hu Xiaotian because he knew how powerful Mercenary City was. It would not matter even if he revealed the saint-tier battle skills. He also believed that the saint rulers no longer knew about the saint-tier battle skills. Just as I thought. I guess that there might be saint-tier battle skills that only exist in legends, but I never thought that there would really be such a thing. It's rumored that saint-tier battle skills are the most powerful battle skills in the world, possessing the power to destroy the world. Only saint rulers can learn them, and they're extremely difficult to comprehend. Anyone who can completely comprehend a saint-tier battle skill would be a supreme expert on the level of the Holy Emperor, Hu Xiaotian sighed emotionally. Jianshan stared at Hu Xiaotian in surprise. He smiled. I never thought that Sir Hu Xiaotian would know so much. You even know so many secrets. With that, Hu Xiaotian awkwardly smiled. It's just general knowledge. As long as you stay on the Tian Yuan continent for a long time, you'll slowly learn about these things. Jianshan and Hu Xiaotian walked together. They chatted all the way back to the inn. Jianshan returned to his room and closed the door. He then opened the window and looked at the scenery outside. However, his gaze was fixed on a building across the street. A white-robed old man sat there as he stared at Jianshan in interest. He was the third elder of the Shi family. Seeing how the third elder was behaving, Jianshan could not help but smile. When he had just left the auction house, the third elder had been following him the entire time. However, he was much more cautious this time, brazenly choosing to follow him at a close distance. He was clearly afraid that Jianshan would slip away from him again. Third elder, don't you feel tired like this? Jianshan looked at the Shi family's third elder who was sitting cross-legged on the roof with a playful expression. The third elder's eyes shone as he calmly said, Jianshan, I'd advise you to hand over the ruler armament. You won't be able to escape this time. Do you want to stay in Mercenary City for the rest of your life? This time, Jianshan did not say anything. He directly closed the window and sat on the bed in thought. He pondered what he should do next. Should he directly kill the third elder and return to Longevity Valley? Or should he stay here and wait for the saint ruler of his clan to arrive and lead him to Longevity Valley for Uncle Shio to deal with? The only thing that troubled Jinshin was that he did not know the exact strength of Uncle Shio and the saint ruler of the Sure family. He was not certain whether Uncle Shio could deal with the saint ruler of the Sure family. Jinshin sat on the bed in thought for a while before finally coming up with a feasible plan. He then sat on the bed to rest. The next morning, Jinshin bid farewell to Hu Xiaotian and left on his Class 3 magical beast mount with a sleeping white tiger. He directly made his way out of the city. Soon, Jinshin left Mercenary City. He continued forward for another 10 kilometers before stopping. He then turned around and looked at the third elder of the Sure family, who had been following him the entire time. He smiled. "Third elder, we've already left the barrier of Mercenary City. Don't you want the ruler armament back? Why haven't you attacked me yet?" The third elder crossed his arms and stared coldly at Jinshin. "Jinshin, seeing how fearless you are, you must have asked for help. Call them all out. There's no point in continuing to hide. Why would I, Jinshin, need to ask for help to deal with you? Third elder, you don't need to worry too much. Today, only I, Jinshin, am here. If you want the ruler armament, then come and get it yourself." He had already expanded the senses of his soul as far as he could, enveloping a radius of 15 kilometers. As soon as he discovered the arrival of a saint ruler, he would rush to Mercenary City as quickly as possible. Arrogant. The third elder snorted coldly as he scanned the surroundings. "Everyone come out. This time, we must take back the 2 king weapons from him." The third elder of the Sure family had already set his sights on Duan Yunjian from the Jitta family. Following his words, 4 old men over the age of 70 suddenly appeared in the air around Jinshin. They formed a circle around Jinshin. Jinshin calmly looked at the old men who had suddenly appeared around him. He was not surprised or surprised at all because his consciousness had already discovered their existence. They had been following him from inside the city all this time. He did not know what method they had used to hide themselves, so it was impossible to see them with the naked eye. A faint, green sword had already appeared in the third elder's hand. He cautiously stared at Jinshin and said, "Jinshin, I'll give you one last chance. Are you going to hand over the ruler armaments or not?" At the same time, the 4 old men around Jinshin all summoned their saint weapons. Facing 5 heaven saint masters at once, Jinshin did not dare to be careless. He immediately used the origin energy of the sword spirits. 2 rays of light, one violet and one azure, shot out from his right hand and condensed into the shape of a sword. Seeing the origin energy of the sword spirits in Jinshin's hand, the third elder recalled the scene of Jinshin risking his life to fight back. His face immediately became stern as he yelled, "This Jinshin is not as simple as he seems on the surface. For elders, be careful. Don't worry, third elder. The 4 of us know about the tragedy of the 4 brothers of the Kai family. We obviously won't follow in their footsteps." An old man confidently smiled. Soon after, a dense layer of yellow light surged out from his body, condensing into an armor that covered his body.